Hello and welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show. My name is Brendan Kane, and I do thank you for tuning on in. And I got to say, folks, I'm not impressed. I don't find myself shaking in my boots like some may out there. I'm sure I've heard many of these people nationally that are telling you that the Seattle Seahawks have lost ground. That somehow or another, not only is it now not an even race, but they have fallen behind. And I don't feel it. I don't believe it. And I got some reasons for it, and I'm going to present them to you today on the show. As we're going to look and really I'm going to present as much my case to you guys as to why I do believe that the Seattle Seahawks still find themselves far ahead of a lot of the league. Still pretty far ahead through really far ahead through some of the league beyond that. And even those that are close, in my opinion, have not broached the distance. And because of, I think, certain reasons that we will get into, of course, but as much as anything else, that just not enough done. Now, is this offseason over with at this point? No, that'll be part of my points within how I'm going to build my case for Seattle in this way, and that there's still more that can be done here. There's the NFL draft, and certainly some teams could unearth some diamonds in there. Though that is one of those anomaly kind of situations that you don't tend to want to try to count on. You hope it happens, but it's hard to necessarily know it's going to absolutely happen with positive certainty. And so you can see, for the most part, the strategy, at least, the approach that the teams have taken this off season. And I just want to remind Seattle Seahawks fans who might find themselves a little bit uneasy watching it this off season, and Seattle not being as maximally aggressive on the surface of things as other teams would appear to be, and understanding that this is the process that took us to the Super Bowl. They didn't catch lightning in a bottle. This was not some shooting star situation with this team. This is all being done because, as I often say so many times over, the team's being so smartly run around every different edge and corner. And that when you do that collectively, that's how you build yourself the great team. It doesn't come from you hitting out of the park with some grand superstar player, a quarterback who can save the day. No. It comes from, what is your approach? Do you have a particular approach? Where do you find the chasing edges, as they like to say? Where do you find those advantages? And do you maximize them to the utmost? And if you can do that across the board, throughout the team, from the front office, down through the coaching staff, down through the player development, well, this is how you separate yourself so thoroughly from other teams. There was a lot of points last year, even deep into the season, where it just sort of went without saying that the Seattle Seahawks seemed to be, by the end of the year, not only the best team in the NFL, but by far the best team in the NFL outside of the Los Angeles Rams. And it would almost seem at times like you had the Hawks and the Rams right here, and then the rest of the NFL, a good step back in where they were, as far as even those teams that were good had their share of many flaws that you could look through and go, yeah, that's not going to necessarily work in the playoffs, or that's going to come back and bite you in the butt here at this point or another. Even in the Rams case, the special teams, you could see that train coming down the tracks from a mile away. It even hit him, of course, in the second game that we played when Shaheed had the return on the kickoff return. So I just want to build a little bit from the ground up here. And we're going to start, conceptually a bit at the front office level of things. And then we're going to get our way down here into looking at what they do on a team-centric basis. And then I want to just point to those teams I spoke about here at the top that are essentially about the 15 teams that are truly chasing us next year. Because a weird little thing is happening right now as a development within the NFL. What you're seeing is teams already starting to angle themselves for a stronger draft next year. And by angle themselves, I mean go quarterback hunting. Because everybody out there on the pundit side of things is already saying, well, there's all these guys that are going to come out next year looking so much better than this year. And there's difference-making talents out there like Jeremiah Smith at the wide receiver position, who may be the best wide receiver prospect we've seen, potentially even going back to Julio Jones, maybe even further than that. And so you're going to have some teams already starting into next year a little bit with a slight punt. Not that they're not going to try for it, but if you're going to come for the king, if you're going to come for the crown, you better bring your full A game. And if you're side-eyeing into the next year's draft already, then you're not really fully coming for the king, are you? And you're just probably going to end up getting slayed for it. So there's really only like that 15-ish, 16-ish teams that I think are really going to be in the fray of where Seattle's at, and dancing with them a little bit as far as potential. And again, in all of them, we're going to get to a little bit of them just quickly blow by blow with them as to why I just don't think that they were able to quite do enough here this offseason on the looks of things, even if they do have, let's say, a semi-strong draft, to make me believe that they've overtaken things. Let's get through this, though. I want to start through this because I got a long way to go on this. I appreciate you guys watching today. As you walk on in the door, if you can hit that like button for me, we got people that may be looking for some Seahawks content right now. You can help them find it by hitting that like button. Get subbed on up if you get a chance. And right off the rip here, I want to just cover a few things which are just going to really pertain towards team building, roster construction, what this team that does, and these are specificities that are separate from other teams and what they do. I think we take for granted some of the stuff that this team does from a philosophy standpoint in the front office and don't understand as much that this is inherently not what you see in other organizations and that you see them going another direction, which maybe not is quite as smart in their approach. And it does begin for me in this centric nature of it to this point specifically is that team building is 365, 24/7. There's never a point in time that this team's trying to sit back and say, you know what, the roster's constructed, we're good, we've used up the cap space, we couldn't do anything if we wanted to do something. They go, okay, leave the space open. John uses that phrase, keep that powder dry. So very important, of course, for him. And they do that. They have continued to do that. The Seattle Seahawks are sitting on not as much as cap space as anybody else. You have teams out there like the Titans, Commanders still sitting on like 60 million, 50 million. Seattle's sitting at about 33 million right now, though they still have a lot of flexibility, though they still have almost no dead money, still an ability with their flexibility to create as much space as they happen to want to at any point in time. But it's a 24/7 approach here. And I think that you hear little flutters of rumors coming out with Myles Garrett now quietly, subtly, moving money up into training camp when it's actually going to hit in here, as my cat has caught a lizard in the garage. Okay. As they have suddenly, my cat has just captured Godzilla in this room, and she's now toying with it. Okay. As you see that situation free up now where it would appear on the surface of it that Myles is sort of doing the solid for the Browns to potentially maybe move him. We'll see on this situation. Maybe it's something else there at play. But the point being is that John wants to be ready to strike no matter the type of player that does become available whenever they do become available. That's really the key point here. And he's going to definitely do that in this situation. As far as I do think there's going to be a deal that's going to present itself here in the next month or two. I don't even think it's necessarily just one deal that's going to present itself here in the next month or two that he's going to jump on and even more further improve this team beyond where it is. So you might be a little bit nervous right now where it stands. I've said this many times over. It's not done. It's not done baking. They're not even done adding the ingredients yet, let alone putting the thing into bake as it stands. And knowing John's track record, he's going to do more. This goes counter to a lot of other teams. This goes counter to a lot of other teams just simply by their process and how they've decided to run things out, where their approach is going to be, well, we had to kind of blow out all our money because we were already kind of behind the eight ball because we mismanaged our resources, or we had to get out from under that bad contract and we had no choice but to eat the bad money within that. This is a little bit of shades of that in certain degrees where it's not just them being stupid in their approach of like, well, why would you just open yourself to this time of year? It's them sort of getting desperate at certain times. It's them managing contracts poorly. It's kind of a conjunction of a lot of different things all at once that makes it sort of happen. But this is a team that does not do that. And John, I think, understands that that's because those are where the market opportunities lie. If there is 10 less teams competing for this player A at this given time of year because they've already shot their shot, then hey, I'm going to be able to come out of this with a better deal. I'm going to pay less resources to get this player. And that is what roster building, of course, is all about. As we go through some of the things here that are going to be dealt with on this front of things, looking for versatile players has now been something that I think we've seen a commonality between John and even his time there with Carroll, but even now growing into Mike Macdonald. Macdonald definitely embraces this, especially when it comes to his defensive players. But when you look throughout this roster, it's less about the rigidity and the type of players you're seeking, forcing them into a very small area of what you need them to do. And then you put a bunch of all that together and then you've got your parts together. This is more about maxing the individual player's talents for sure, but it's also wanting to see in these players those guys who can truly do the versatile stuff, not just do it on paper, not just, well, you do it, but then you suck at it, but be able to do everything. Just take the defense alone as you look at them. You've got in Leonard Williams, a guy that can play both 3 tech, 1 tech. You can kick him out to the edge and he can have success out there. Jaron Reed is a 1-tech or 3-tech, nose tackle or 3-tech. He can do either. Byron Murphy, of course, as we've seen, absolutely can do both of them. And Tyrese Knight, I've seen him both excel as a will and excel as a Mike linebacker. Devin Witherspoon's operated as both a starter in the slot and as a starter on the outside. I mean, hell, the guy could probably play safety if you needed him to. Nick Emanuari can play literally every position on the defense with maybe the exception of defensive tackle. And Julian Love, you have a guy with a background that goes back to college as an outside cornerback when he's getting into the draft, who's eventually gotten to become the free safety at that position of things. Versatility, the more that you can do on this team, the better from their perspective. And again, this marries so nicely between John and Mike, that mismarriage you might have in other organizations between general manager and head coach, where I want to kind of go this thing in our philosophy of seeking versatile players. And the coach says, well, I want rigidity. I want the guys that fit exactly to what I want, what I need, what's got to be just this in these parameters. And I think Mike's got certainly archetypes of players he's looking for within his system, but he's also shown in his history a lot of willingness to be open to going a couple different ways with whatever roster he kind of has in place. Then this also goes over the other side of the ball. Elijah Arroyo is meant to be, we hope with his development, one of those kind of pieces that, what is he? Is he an H-back? Is he a pure inline tight end? Is he sometimes an X wide receiver, as I think the team has a hope that he's going to be? This is a real trend in the NFL, looking for these type of tight ends that can operate in this manner, looking for these type of guys that can, go out there and be able to just be moved as that chess piece on the board into a mismatch against the defense, where you can isolate that kind of defense who's bad in coverage, who can't run, who doesn't have ball skills. You can go at him with that. And I think likewise you see with Cooper Kupp and Jackson, guys that can go from the outside to inside pretty fluidly. They've proven that out to be the case as well. I think AJ Barner can run some H-back stuff along with inline stuff. He doesn't have to be just an inline, hard hat. I'm going to just block and just kind of run these little routes where I just kind of chip block for a second and then run 2 yards out in space. He can certainly be dynamic down the field, as he even showed in the Super Bowl. So versatility is something that I think also helps to separate them versus other teams in the National Football League, where it does become, I think, a little bit more of, here's our system, here's the exact player model type we're trying to fit into. And I think that just leads you into now narrows down the number, I think, of potential prospects you can look to add onto your team, and thus making it harder to build your team because of it. It's one less extra place that this team has been consistent at in years and really following through. And I think that it really even starts to become more emphasized now because of the success that they've just had. And because as well, Macdonald's, I think, a little bit more so even than what the prior regime was, more into this versatility than anything else. Because I think he looks at it and he goes, yeah, this is good to have. I'm going to have to get this lizard out. Hold on, folks. Hold on. She, of course, chose to grab that lizard right as I go live. She grabs the lizard about this freaking big. So, welcome to Pumpkin's world. Okay, back here. Sorry about that, folks. Into the show. Hey, it's live. Anything can happen here, including Godzilla lizards in my place here. So, versatility big. I think this is, again, back different. Just wrap this up. Point back is different than what I think other organizations run as. They've got their systems and schemes. Air raid offense. I need my wide receivers that can spread the field, be fast. Maybe blocking is not as important. I need to get those fast. Well, okay, blocking becomes less important. Okay, it becomes less important across the whole wide receiver core, maybe, because you're just more worried about what they're going to do getting down the field and their pass catching. And there's other inverses to this, but there's other system and schemes that do this type of thing where you can find them drafting certain players types. You're like, oh yeah, That's that player type. Oh yeah, that's that player type of guy. And not always for good reason. Sometimes it's just they'll take swings on guys that are super raw, or it's not always into the good component of things. It's more of the flailing angle of things. Next up here is prey on the weak. I know it's not fun to do this. I'm not saying I'm happy. I advocating for doing this. I feel a little dirty for doing it. But nonetheless, folks, I'm just reporting on this. I'm not instructing it. And I indeed can see in John now that, he's got a little bit of some bullying mentality go on. Does George Paton always answer the call when he rings him? I don't know. I'm not so sure. If he calls out to Pittsburgh right now, is he getting a lot of love? Maybe. Did some of the Crosby negotiations get held up because of the Geno returns on that one? I don't know. But in addition to trading out on some of these players to some of these teams that were in more of maybe, let's just call it, some of that desperate state, you also, of course, have some of the trades that have commenced in recent years, where even those quote unquote teams that would look to have been, out on the end of the winning side of that trade come up going, yeah, you probably came out on the bad end of that trade. Seattle came out with getting more from that. Detroit Lions don't come out of the situation from Quandre going, well, Quandre, that draft pick we got from him was way better than us giving up a Pro Bowl safety to Seattle. Carlos Dunlap for a seventh round pick. He got you a sack a game down the home stretch of the season. Pretty good deal there for Seattle. Target some of these teams that, a little lesser. Saints. Oh, you think you're getting a fourth and a fifth round pick? Well, now in retrospect, it looks like a 5 and a 6 for Shaheed. And that looks like a bloody bargain. Prey on the weak. Not proud about it, but John's doing it. John's doing the dirty. John's getting after it a little bit with this stuff, and I dig that about him, because this is part of what can separate you from others that don't quite recognize this market opportunity that does exist, that's there for the grabbing. And you always look to do it. I mentioned Myles Garrett. He becomes available on the market. Here we go. One another great thing that you see on the back of this is kind of like that secondary part that injects into this prey on the weak strategy, is that you target these players, John does, that are people that have been playing in these bad organizations, for bad teams, for bad coaching, that they themselves are good players. Because this is what we have to acknowledge exists in football. A player in this situation and coaching really does impact much more, I think, than is given credit what happens around them. And so when you have these players that, if you are a great player and you have a spirit of, I'm going to get after it every play and I'm competitive and I want to win, and it's not in just, I'm going to get by, I'm clocking in and out, I'm going to do the bare minimum energy wise, but you're actually the type of guy that's going to, really want to get after it in full. It's still in that kind of environment breaks you down after a while, after years of it, bad games, losing seasons, no playoffs. You doing everything Herculean you can to overcome it, yet not making it look a difference. You get that player now that gets to go to a team that can win, and what that does for them, the weight that takes off their back, allows them to play at their best, to not be the point of emphasis for the opposition to take away. Now you get an even better player, and then with it collectively a better team. Prey on the weak. Another thing, and these are just organizationally things before we get to more of the coaching stuff. We're going to go deep here early on, folks, so hang in there. Proper positional valuation. This is a lesson hard learned by John. This is a lesson that didn't just happen overnight. This is one that took some time. And that is the understanding that whether you may like it or not, there are positions within the NFL that are paid less for a reason. If you're going to be smarter than the average bear and go zigging where everyone's zagging in this way, universally, you got to have a good reason. In Seattle, here's when they did it in the past, did not have good reason. For instance, when they paid two safeties top end money at the same time. They weren't the highest paid in the sport, but Jamal was for a heartbeat of a moment, and Quandre was pretty well up there as far as some of the most highest paid. On paper, that looks good. You're putting two dynamic guys in the back end. On paper, looks great. In practicality, it just doesn't work, and no other teams do it, so you shouldn't. It's not that you shouldn't pay at least one safety. It's not that you shouldn't put investment into the position. It's that you shouldn't put it at the same time within it. Seattle this offseason passed on the Kobe Bryant signing at the safety position. Have some reinforcements with Ty Akata. Have the depth there. They're going to probably reinforce it further with the draft. But this was also a recognition on their part that we're paying right now in the teens with Love. This is a $13.5 million cap hit a year right now for Love. Do I want to double dip that into the other safety position? Is that the proper way to balance this roster? I don't have endless cap space. I have to manage this in a certain way where certain funds have to go into the right directions to have maximum impact. Does a safety have maximum impact? The league has quantifiably said no in regards to this. Not kind of no. They said no. The only way the safety value has really increased in the recent years has been the cover two shell safety looks that require more from the safeties than years past. But even then, you only really see the true safeties, in my opinion, really getting elevated in salary if they can come down and play the slot. Well, you got to do the slot too. I mean, that's the only, then we'll pay you. Okay, Kyle Hamilton. Okay, now we'll pay you. And so Seattle, hasn't necessarily had that exactly. And Brian, who does have a slot background, but he's playing pure safety as much as anything else. And you didn't pay it because you wanted to balance this off. Middle linebacker, Drake Thomas on a pretty economical deal compared to Ernest Jones, who's not necessarily top of the market, but he's pricely some. Now you got the investment when you look at it where a couple of years ago, everyone talked about how there's no money on the offensive line. Well, look, there's the contract for Cross. Look, there's the contract for Abraham Lucas. Oh, look, suddenly another first round pick was able. Investment into the right places for the right impact. Yeah, you do want to invest into wide receiver, especially when you're putting it to the right talent. That's typically a smart money spent. So the positional value thing also comes in, even the Walker contract. Why aren't you giving him that money? Because it's just not smart to spend that kind of money on a running back and have that much of your cap dedicated to a running back in that position and the track record of that and all that goes into that we talked about. And Seattle's not doing that. Other teams aren't doing this. One small little edge, just another edge that you add onto the stack that they're doing that other teams aren't to this way of things. So look up and down the roster and you point to me and you show me where the value is not right for where they're spending the money right now. Just from a philosophy standpoint of, well, this runs counter to what we understand about defenses and offenses in this day and age to be doing this here or doing that there. You can't at this point. John's cleaned it all up. It hasn't been this way his whole regime, his whole time period here. But these are the lessons he's learned through his time, in my opinion, that's got this now just right. Just at the right setting. We keep moving. Player load management and injury care. I'm not going to spend a long time on this, but the Seattle Seahawks are a phenomenal team about not pushing players back out in the field. That they will shut players down, that they'll take their time with certain specific injuries that seem to be more dodgier than others. Look at Abraham Lucas's injury, how careful they were with him, how slow they were to work him back in to really make sure everything was right. And what this allows for this to happen is then those players to have better long-term health and sustainability. And that you have, I think, a lot of teams out there that try to cook this up fast and they go out there and play through it, throw a brace on there, play through it, rub something on it, play on through it. Take this Toradol shot, play on through it. In Seattle, I think a lot of times in their approach to this is that we're not going to do that because we recognize if we take this more longer term, there's a benefit coming behind that. Why do I have Kenneth Walker up there? Because you had to manage Kenneth Walker's injury situations through the first few years of his career, manage his load balance this year to make sure you had him performing at the level he did in the playoffs and the Super Bowl. The average fan, the layman, will look at the Walker performance and they'll be like, oh, that's just what he is. He does that every week. That's how you managed to get him to that point. You did it like you were having an athlete trying to peak for a boxing match at the right, perfect time as far as physically goes. And you did that in your understanding of watching Walker as you went along and learning his body and learning what he could and could not handle, learning what was too much and adjusting with time, not taking the approach a lot of teams do where they will just bash their head in the wall and keep taking that same approach with players. A lot of time it goes back to that old school of just play through it. Just having you out there is enough. Just play through it. We don't care about the long term. We'll find somebody after you. The disposability I think a lot of teams take across the board on positions in the NFL versus I think Seattle that's shown a very player-friendly environment when it comes to that type of stuff and their approach to it. But I think it is one of the places that they're really a lot more smarter than other teams on this, who I think try to force things a little bit faster, who just aren't afforded, I think, the patience that the Seattle's afforded, partly because they've got, of course, the consistency in place and they're running from their jobs, because this is where you go, why would teams want to force players back if a medical staff tells me this guy would be better suited to shut him down this year and get him back into next year. And then there's a good chance he's almost 100% healed over the injury. Why wouldn't you take that approach all across the board in the NFL? Great question. Reason being, my job's on the line, bro. I might get fired, man. I'm not going to help the next guy out. You want me to help the next guy out so I can fail at my job now? I'd rather he goes out there on his peg leg and gets me through a game, gets me through the season, gets me the playoffs, and keeps my job another year. And then when he comes back next year at camp and he can't work the legs, so be it. I'll find another edge. Harder to find a job. So it seems like a small thing, this thing. But it's a thing that I watch across the board, the NFL applied even this offseason, and how teams go about their management of players and guys they're letting go and guys that they're keeping, especially to try to keep themselves under the cap. Because then that's where it's like different decisions go up against each other. Don't have a lot of cap space. Got this guy that we drew out the most of. We grinded him out a little bit. We don't want to be patient with the injury situation. We can save a little bit of money off him anyway. Just let him go with the injury thing. Let it be somebody else's problem. Seattle doesn't quite take that same approach, and I think it does give him a bit of an edge. A year early rather than a year late. This is the old Patriot way that they set the model for, where they were so good for so many years and they were able to stack up so many different draft picks on the back of this approach. We will take players of ours who are just about to get paid, want to be paid big, want to be paid more than we want to pay them. And maybe they're close to not quite being what they were prior. And there's different levels of this to where maybe they're, still decent players, but maybe they're just not the impact you're going to be paying for oftentimes in the draft returns you're giving to us. And recently, John Schneider's been on the pretty good side of this one. Hard to find too many times you're going to see with him having given up a player and that player going somewhere else and take it off. And the team seems to understand in general, whether it's a trade or just letting a player go, they seem to have a pretty good understanding of when somebody's got something left there in the tank to go with and when now the time is to let him off. People were wondering about Tyler Lockett last year and releasing him, and why would you do that? Why wouldn't you bring him back? It's not like the receiving core is all stacked up to hell. Why wouldn't you at least, bring him in for one more year to go through? And it goes because, he's at the end of the road. It's done. There's not going to be anything left there. He went to 2 different organizations last year, and there wasn't really anything, left there with Tyler. Bless him. It just was. Another way, though, that a lot of the organizations out there, we see even within our own division, what do you see with the 49ers? Clutching, holding on to players with a death grip. Look at the Trent Williams situation with the Niners right now. My man's going to be 47 years old next year. His chest hair is getting gray. And they're going to go out there and they're going to restructure him on another contract. They're going to give in to his wins. It's like they gave in last year to the tight end position. Just like it gave in last year to Christian McCaffrey on another deal. We already paid you, Christian. Yeah, but give me another deal. Oh, but we don't really, you're getting old. The Achilles, give me another deal. Okay. They can't help themselves. They can't stop themselves. They can't be smartly intelligent in the approach. Instead, they go, rubber stamp. It'll make the fans happy. Difference between a smart organization is a dumb one. Dumb ones will hold on a year late, 2 years late, 3 years late. Smart ones get out ahead of it because football moves that fast. It's not basketball, not baseball. Things don't last forever. One few here before we're going to get to more of the football, denoted ones on this list that I wanted to cover. Drafting for value. This has been another one like the positional item I brought up. Exactly like the positional one that I brought up, which is that this is not one you easily learned. John has had to be the Indiana Jones of general managers, navigating the jungles, riding on little canoes through the rivers, circumventing the crocodiles and animals out there to get to this thing that he could learn this sacred knowledge. He got into the temple. He ducked the boulder. He did the trade-off. And he came away with it with the sacred knowledge. You, son, will draft for value. It actually came to him in a voice. It was something like this.
You, John, will draft for value.
Exact voice. And John looked and said, yes, I will. What's my proof of this? Take a look at this 2017 draft. Mike Macdonald, need a replacement there for that 3-tech at times. That could be at least a pass rusher inside. Jonathan Early chasing the Calais Campbell. Couldn't find it, took the risk, took a risk he knew he shouldn't have. That one bit you in the butt. Then you got post 6 center, need. Shaquille Griffin, cornerback. It was a need position at that time. Nazir Jones was literally insurance reinforcement for Malik because you just weren't quite sure if Malik was going to hold up. And then you got Amara Darba in the 3rd round at the wide receiver position, which was also increasingly growing to be a bit of a need. These are the first 5 rounds, by the way, that I'm looking at. I'm not going in through all the depths of these drafts. I just want to show you the prime picks of this era. 2018, worry about Chris Carson's health. Need some insurance, Rashad Penny. Need some defensive end help desperately. Cliff Averill has retired. We got to get somebody back in here. Right now, no Michael Bennett anymore. Got to get somebody out here. Rasheem Green, how about you? Will Disley in the 4th round. Shaquem Griffin, another linebacker in the 5th round. Trey Flowers, cornerback. LJ Collier still remained a need because Rasheem Green didn't pop the prior year. So you came back and grabbed LJ Collier in the 1st round. I can 100% prove to you that this is, well, not 100%. I can make a strong case of proving that this was absolutely a need in the respect of LJ Collier was something like the 15th edge in the 1st round taken, the edge and defensive tackle taken in the 1st round. So it was just one of those ridiculous scenarios where you had to think that that edge group was just so talented, so stacked that year that you were getting this kind of player at 29 versus Seattle also just happening to have this huge gaping need at defensive end at the same time. Kind of like Occam's razor on this one. Marquise Blair, safety, another guy where you're looking to draft him as much at this point in time because you don't really like where you're at as far as the couple guys you ended up taking a little bit later on here that I don't think we got them on this list here. That should have been on here. Yeah, it doesn't have the guys on here, but you had went with this one in sorry, going back here a little bit. You went with you're going Trey Flowers. You're trying to reinforce corner throughout this time, trying to reinforce wide receiver throughout this time. You can see them taking a couple swings in here. You get DK into 2019, which is a great pick there, of course. You miss completely on Gary Jennings. You can see, though, here sandwiched in this that you've got, receivers, running backs, cornerbacks, edges, kind of sprinkled in here that for a couple of years you're chasing this need. That's kind of my point. I won't prolong it here. Again, coming back to Darrell Taylor. Why are you at Darrell Taylor? You're at Darrell Taylor here in 2020 because of the fact that LJ Collier didn't work. And why'd you go to LJ Collier? Because Rasheem Green didn't work. And all 3 of these picks were need. Yeah, were you hoping the last couple guys drafted prior were going to pop? You did. But all these early picks of these edges kind of do concretely show that you weren't really confident that that was going to happen necessarily in itself. You got Jordan Brooks, who you drafted to be not a need pick as much as anything else, just of your 2 linebackers in Wright and Wagner were getting old, and I think that they were actually kind of somewhat of a smart pick from a value standpoint if they really liked him as much as they did, because they were trying to get somebody reinforced for a position that was likely to have an injury the next year, at least with how much age was on the books with those guys. Damian Lewis was a little bit of a reach for need pick, worked out good though. Colby Parkinson need sometimes does work. Colby Parkinson tight end was solid. DJ Dallas was okay in the 4th round. 21 Eskridge. You went out there and got Waldron at this time period. So when you went out and got offensive coordinator Waldron, you need to go get him basically the yak guy in this offense. You did not have that in this offense. Lockett and DK were not yak guys. So you went out there and got Dwayne Eskridge to be a need pick. Cornerback had remained a need situation with Trey Brown coming in at this time. That was, in my opinion, desperately need a little bit more help on the outside. Then you just had a couple picks later on that are pretty unimportant at this point. Then we get to where value kicks in. So all of this has gone along, and now you start to kick in for value. You get Charles Cross at number 9, rated by just about everybody out there that was a draft pundit as a top 10 rated player in that draft. Boye Mafe was solid value in the 2nd round by all accounts. Same with Walker. I had a 1st round grade on Abraham Lucas, so to be getting that guy in the 3rd round from my perspective at that time was amazing and kind of looks correct in retrospect. Kobe Bryant in the 4th round absolutely looks like, if not a steal, looks like a real good pick as far as the value goes. You were looking to kind of get cornerback filled in that draft. It was a little bit of a need. You double dipped later on as well with Woolen, but you picked these guys in the right spot. You didn't reach for them early on. You grabbed them where the value was right in what was a very deep cornerback class in this particular year. So this was a draft that really hardly turned towards value. I still don't know how Abraham Lucas lasted in the 3rd round. Maybe it was the medicals and the knee on that one. But you obviously lived in a lot more of a valuation versus some of these drafts. Is it more picks? Is it better picks than some of these other drafts we're looking at? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Is it maybe a stronger draft than some of these other drafts that we're looking at here? Maybe a little bit in some of these. And there's drafts in here with like this one in 2021 where you only had, I don't even know why they're putting in round 7 Carrie. I don't remember Carrie Angeline, but where you only had so many picks in the draft. So it's like you really had only one legitimate true day 1 or 2 pick in Dwayne Eskridge, but it makes the Dwayne Eskridge pick then look all the worse as a need-based pick when you do backtrack on that one. When we go to 2023, after having the really suddenly change of direction in 2022 where you can hardly see the value back on the board, you come back into 2023, Devin Witherspoon, all-pro cornerback, Jackson Smith and Jigba at 20, all-pro wide receiver. I think the value's pretty good there. Derek Hall is rounding into a really solid edge here on this team. 2 sacks in the Super Bowl. Zach Charbonnet was having a similar rise in what he was starting to bring, if not even a little bit better from the running back position before the torn ACL. And Anthony Bradford gets banged around, but he's become a consistent starting right guard in this league who gives you, maybe a little bit below average performances, the collective, but he's certainly probably not quite as bad as people are, saying as they put upon him as far as what they see. But home run hits here into 2023, even into the 20th pick in the first round, this is where we come into, well, you have these high picks. Yeah, that's part of it. But then it's also that you're picking these even right guys in the right spots that are also finding the value later on. And remember, as we go to value on this, when you look at the Derek Hall pick, did Boye Mafe have the best year the prior year in what he'd done? Not necessarily, but was an absolute need pick at that point to grab there? No. Zach Charbonnet, you're taking after you just took Kenneth Walker the prior year. So it was absolutely not a need pick there necessarily. Jackson Smith and Jigba, you had Tyler Lockett, you had DK Metcalf. So you didn't have to go with that route with it on that pick there with your direction. With Witherspoon, you just had Kobe Bryant and you've got Wool in there on the other side of it. You could have found something else there if you wanted to at the cornerback position. You didn't have to go there. You just trusted your player evaluation. Then, of course, we've got 2024's draft with Byron Murphy, Christian Haynes, Tyrese Knight, AJ Barner, Nehemiah Pritchett. Mark Murphy, you got him because every other team would come back to me saying again to you guys, teams don't go the direction you think they would go. So you go, then, well, every team's going to live in value. Well, if every team lives in value, we should never have landed Byron Murphy because you had 14 offensive players go up ahead of you in that draft. And that allowed you the inroads to land the second player in the draft. And the Colts kind of reached for needed edge because that's what they needed in Latu was the edge help. So they were really not in on Byron Murphy because they had Buckner as it was there. They had there already in Corey Redding and Buckner, their 2 defensive tackles. So they were not going to be a team that were going to trust just value. I wouldn't be surprised if the Colts actually had a higher grade on Byron Murphy than Latu. It's just Latu was more of the need. So you might have probably got the best defensive player in the draft because the Colts are reaching for need and because all of those offensive players go up ahead of you in the front of that draft, specifically with the quarterback heavy way that everybody was kind of leaning. 6 quarterbacks taken in the first 12 picks. Christian Haynes hasn't worked out. You're not going to hit every pick out of the park, but there was certainly good valuation to be had where you took him. He was actually a 3rd rounder, so this is misput in. I know these rounds aren't written in here. Sorry, I was kind of doing this fast. Tyrese Knight, AJ Barner, absolutely phenomenal value picks for where you got him. Nehemiah Pritchett starting to actually round into a guy who might become a starter on this team into next year. He was really looking good last year into year 2. So the development is definitely there. And I shouldn't have to sell you guys on last year's draft. I shouldn't have to go bull by bull for you guys with that. Gray Zabel, I think this team definitely took the best value. I've had some arguments and debates with folks in my chat on this one, but my standing on it is that the team had higher valued players than Zabel, but many of them that were then taken up ahead of where he was selected. And they had targeted some of those other guys going, okay, if this guy lands here, that'll be a go. But then when they all went off the board, I could very much see how he became kind of the highest valued guy on their board where they stood at that point. Nick Aminwari, fantastic value there. We'll see with Arroyo and Milrow. Those were a little bit luxury picks, and those have picks with a lot of potential and a lot of upside to them. So certainly if you're going to go for upside, you're going to tend to have to pick that pretty high. Riley Mills looks great. Torrey Horton looks like he's going to be a player in this league. And again, all these picks as I looked at them were ones where you can go back and just track again. Value, not need. Was this pick value need? Was Riley Mills in the 4th round a need-based pick when you've got Jaron Reed, Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy up on your defensive line? In my opinion, no, not at all. It's one where you go, we just love this player too damn much to pass on him. And I don't think most teams can kind of make that same pull of the lever. I think they go, man, we're going to be stacking up 4 defensive tackles. He's not going to see the field. And we could actually go get out a player right now who could be productive for us on the field right now that we wouldn't have to wait to see the fruits of that guy down the line. Say nothing like coming off the ACL and not being come back into general managers having a bit of that clock ticking thing. I don't have the time to wait for this guy to recover over his ACL to maybe become a good player, maybe down the road. My job is on the line today, right now. You know, I gotta get this done. I can't wait on stuff. So value was a big part of this. Long-winded on that. Sorry, we're gonna be long-winded all the way today. I'm hyped up for this team right now. But drafting for value. The team took the turn 3 years ago and they've hard-lined it this way. They're not going to deviate now, not coming off of a Super Bowl victory. It's just not going to happen. No chance of it. And this is one of the places that has truly, really separated them. Yes, did the Russell Wilson trade help? Sure it did. But then taking those assets and then utilizing them with a value-based model approach versus a need-based model approach, reaching to fill in holes on the roster like you did back in those teens, big difference. All right, can't sit on the mouse. Next up, dedication to the line of scrimmage dominance. Again, I won't spend a lot of time on this one. You've got 2 first-rounders on this offensive line, 2 third-rounders on this offensive line. You have now for the first time in, I cannot literally remember the last time, it's been so many years, you have been able to create continuity, bringing back all 5 starters, and not only all 5 starters, you're bringing back every backup, including Josh Jones. So the dedicating to that side of the ball and the resources there, number one, the keeping of the continuity, which is as important as putting the resources. I can throw a lot of resources at something in one given year, like we saw Minnesota do last year. And if I don't have the continuity factor in my back pocket helping me along the way, then I'm not getting the full force of that. I'm going to have to wait on that part of it. My belief is that this offensive line is going to be even better into next year because for the first time in all these years, they're bringing back that continuity. It is not going to be learning on the fly. It is not going to be, I have to learn this guy to my side and what he's going to do in every scenario against this blitz, against this stunt, how he reacts in that way, how he turns his body, how much I can count on him to help me on this given block versus that. So many little intricacies within that offensive line that over time, rep after rep after rep, that you learn that now this team's going to get the benefit of moving into this year. And the same is going to be true of this defensive line because both we see the resources and we see the continuity. The resources are through the roof. The second rounder you gave for Leonard Williams, $20 million a year over that for him now. Byron Murphy and the first round pick that he was and what you gave up for him. They're 4 rotational edges that you bring off the edge to keep them fresh, to set those kind of power edges, to help set up the back end a little bit better. Jaron Reed, who remains a very consistent force on the inside. The upside of Riley Mills. Dominant group on both sides of the ball. And old school football, old school principles of football, as boring as they can be for maybe some of the modern fans out there, they still do prove to be true. You put your investments into the offensive line, that's the makings of Super Bowl teams. And the teams that fall short, the teams that would seem to have great players, quote unquote, you'll tend to find their lines of scrimmage are leaving you wanting somewhere. Yeah, Pumpkin agrees with that too. Player leadership, another one that I think is just about impossible for somebody, these teams out here to replicate, that's going to continue through the next year, that's not going anywhere. That's a part that I don't think anybody really talks about as much. And it's probably because it's hard to kind of quantify. I can't show it to you in a statistic or a number. I can't rank it for you. It's something that you have to almost in your own ears go and listen to when these players talk, in the conviction and the manner and their approach. This is a team of like stoics in a lot of ways. You know, they're locked in on their job. They're going to go do their job. They're very intense, as every bit of intensive like the Legion of Boom era teams. But they're doing it with a countenance and a manner that's just unique unto themselves a little bit. And I'll tell you, we got some schizophrenics out there. We got some skeptical teams out there. You know? We got some overly positive Paul teams out there. We got some different mentality type teams and their approaches out there, and that you can look at them, you know? And, you know, we got some fatalists. We definitely got some fatalist type teams out there. You can't look at the Browns on a yearly basis and not tell me that's either a team of nihilists or a team of fatalists. One of the two you pick. It's got to be one of the two. But in this team, you have a team that's locked in its leadership, connected across the board. And a lot of it's the defensive players, of course, but you can put your Cooper Kupps and your Sam Darnolds and the offensive line and Charles Cross and Lucas and AJ Barner in here too. But it's where last year started. It's the spark initially that lit the wick that eventually became the explosion. The spark was the offseason and the team coming together. Ernest Jones reaching out to Marcus Lawrence. We're doing something special. Come here if you want to be part of this. We're going to go get this done. I'm not blowing smoke. I'm telling you the truth. We're going to be locked in. This is going to be serious. This isn't empty talk. We're going to live this every day. We're going to go practice this every day. We're going to put our life on line every day to get this to be the utmost best we possibly can, because we're all chasing that chip. I got hungry dogs on this team that want it. Guys that have been in this league for a while that want it and will be willing to lead along with you and with me to go and take these young pups where we got to go take them. And you might have a team that has one of those guys, and you might have a team that has two of those guys, or three or four of those guys. Do you have a team that can permeate with those players? Oh, that's hard to do. I can show you leaders through a team and not talent. Famous Seahawks teams back in the late era of Holmgren, when he had lost the general manager control and it was going to Tim Ruskell. Tim Ruskell loved Boy Scouts. Right place, right time, hard workers. The most talent. He'd overlook that. Okay, he can't run. Okay, he's not very athletic. Okay, he can't jump. Boy works hard. Boy, he's bought in. You've got 100% participation in the voluntary offseason OTA last year. Spark. That is the spark. That's the jump off. And that leadership not only just started in the offseason and was just kind of a cool thing for them to do that sounds good as a soundbite, it continued on throughout the season. And you saw how they held themselves accountable and how they talked about the approach and what the approach was, the day-by-day aspect of this. A big part of what the coach has to get across these players universally outside of Seattle, but to every football team, I think it's in a lot of ways it goes out beyond just football, that you could probably apply this to a lot of sports, basketball, baseball, in that you've got to embrace this journey aspect of it. Yeah, you want to get to the Super Bowl. Yeah, you've got your goals. Yeah, you have the things you want to accomplish. But you have to sort of throw that stuff away and almost ignore it and put the blinders on and literally make it every day about making yourself at your greatest. You know, and we all would love to do that in theory, but especially as a football player that knows his career is finite, knows that time is winding down, and that if I'm going to maximize this, I got to work like this to set myself apart from my competition, who's also doing a lot of similar stuff. So the leadership, the willingness to be vocal, the willingness for the vets who've been multimillionaires. Leonard Williams earned as much money in this sport as just about anybody else. He's got no reason to have to lead anybody. DeMarcus Lawrence has got millions in the bank, all the accolades you could ask for. He didn't have to go out there and show anybody the way, but they're doing it because they wanted it. They're doing it because they understand the effect of that when they have a team of leaders like this and what it can do to the team, and it isn't going away. You didn't lose your leaders this offseason. They're returning in full. Don't undersell that part of the team. It's not talked about enough, folks, and I'm telling you, it's a big part of what makes this thing go, because accountability now sits at the stack because of it. Guys hold guys to account. And it's not just, I didn't do my job. Oh, well. It's like, no, oh, well. The standard is the standard, and you will adhere to it. Let's get into some of the game stuff. Then we'll get over to you guys here in the chat. These are more kind of just, to me, what Seattle does on a game plan basis, on how they run their team individually in the game by their strategy and their approach. That is, I think, pretty universal game by game and doesn't deviate much. And I think that when you look at what they do offensively to defensively to special teams and all of it working together, is that it is a system that works together. All the parts work well. Let's say you have an explosive offense, but then you just have it at the expense then of a defense that's, let's say, bad at covering. They can stop the run great tacklers, but they just can't stop the pass. And then you got an offense that's just going to throw the ball all over down the field, run up the scoreboard, but then whoever they play oppositionally can kind of hit them tit for tat because they've sort of chosen to structure themselves. If they're not interconnected in the way that their team kind of plays. It's kind of a rough sort of example, but I think you can see some of the teams out there that have this sort of going on, where they're kind of trying to be a little bit of this and then a little bit of that and then a little bit of this. And if we put it all together, we can make the great team. I think with Seattle, instead, it's more of this all interconnects in that circle in that way. And so it starts with, first, mold the game plan around confusion, opponents' weaknesses, and the conditions at play. All of this together. So you're not just looking at what the team's done, what the players' tendencies are. We're going to also mold this around first. Everything's going to confuse. Offensively, what does the outside zone system do? It sets itself up, play in and play out, to make it look like to the defense anything could come from prior to the snap. A big part of what makes this system go, or what's at the head of importance in this system, is making sure that there's no tells for a defense to know what you're going to run. Thus, you're forcing the defense to have to play a little bit more straight up. Now, there's more that goes beyond this, a little more complexity within this, but it's at the base nature of the offense itself. We're going to come up and line up, and you're not going to just see by the way we've got our personnel structure out that it's got to be run or it's got to be pass. You're going to have to more often than not really be predicting right up to the point of the snap. And then defensively, of course, this is center point for what Mike does defensively speaking. Everything is built to change post-snap. If he could, he would be probably flipping that whole defensive line post-snap on top. But we know what the coverage is, the cover two shell, spinning the coverages on the back end, the stunts, the twists, the times where you run the simulated pressures, then you fall out of it very oftentimes, still back with only a front four. You just don't know which four are going to be coming. Ultimate confusion. The feeling of when you play the defense that there's 12, 13 guys in the football field. All of it on the back at the front of it of confusion. What I see before the snap is not what it becomes post-snap. And this is something that a lot of teams are trying to run in the league and replicate. But you can't replicate Mike Macdonald's mind. And you can say, well, he's early in his career. And he is. But at 3 different stops, he has had a remarkable touch now in what he's applied with his brain and his understanding of defense and how he applies it and what he does as an approach. 3 different stops. One at a college level, which at that point in time, you start to get to a point of, well, yeah, this ain't happening here by accident. He inherited this personnel from Coach Carroll. He inherited Coach Carroll's personnel, and he's making it work. And there is some overlap between what Carroll wants to what he wants, but not completely. And in a lot of ways has made it work pretty seamlessly. Attacking the opponent's weaknesses. Sometimes you get teams that are saying, well, we're just going to do what we do. I'm going to do what we do. We do what we do. We're going to do what they do. They know we know we're going to do what we do. Great. What a tactical advantage that is. Verse, where are they weak? Do they have, pass protection issues? Do they have an alligator armed left tackle in the Super Bowl? What can we get? Do they have issues in pass protection against the blitz? Or are they maybe great against the blitz and we shouldn't do it and we need to drop back in coverage and just try to be preventive in that way and try to spin the coverages and confuse in that fashion and lean on that instead? What is the opponent weak at? What are we strong at? Where can we attack? Offensively, we've got the means to go over the top if we got to hammer a weak secondary. But if you can't stop the run, we're going to live there as well. One thing is that we're not going to hammer ourselves into your strength. And again, you might go, why would teams ever hammer themselves into the strength within a football team? Because teams operate from that sort of frustratingly, stubborn approach of like, there's this machismo thing of like, we're just going to be what we're going to be and we're going to overpower them by sheer will of force. Like, that sounds great, but wouldn't you just rather take the easier approach? I can go through the haunted woods, but I got the path around the woods right there. See, you've got some yellow bricks on it. Think I'll take that one instead. So you go after the opponent's weaknesses and then the conditions. You saw this in a couple of games this year, beat the Panthers. The Niners game, that was the second game that they played there against the Niners in San Francisco, where the conditions leading up the week were rainy. And your approach offensively was to fit to those conditions. Whereas you see certain coaches like the Chicago Bears in the playoff games, I thought at times this year, where 1-1 was fine, but especially the one that they lost there, the Rams, where I just felt like they were not interested in the least in trying to really work within the conditions they were playing in. Cold, slippery, icy, and you got Caleb back there trying to throw and just do his normal type of stuff. And it just was one where it was going to end up falling up short. You could feel like in that game as the game was rolling along and you're thinking, well, man, Ben Johnson didn't put this game plan together at all for the conditions. He just treated this like we're in August and everybody's got the stable footing and everything's all good. It made, really no sense. And what you see with Seattle is, I think, a willingness with Mike to kind of read the room, read what's going on, to say, okay, if the conditions are bad, we're going to turn to this. A lot of teams I don't think do this. So confusion, attack the weaknesses, conditions. I know this is kind of long-winded, but folks, this is again why I think we're still far ahead. It doesn't come down to just players. You don't just get to add 2 players and that you circumvented all this stuff that's being done, and a lot of times both on the back end, but also tactically. And we're going to get to some of the stuff here with what these teams do counter-tactically, or what they seem to be setting up themselves to do this upcoming year, and why there's little there. Tactical patience is a big part of what makes Mike run as well. He's going to be very amoeba-like and amendable game in and game out and what he's going to look to do. He might have a plan, but willing to change it. This is why you see him looking for inconsistent drives, to look for the points first and foremost before he's going to start doing what a lot of coaches do, which is I'm just going to go for it every down. I'm going to go for it every down. I mean, 4th down, let's go for it. Be aggressive. Analytics tell me go for it. Let's just go for it. You see in Mike, he'll be a little bit more picking and choosing of his times. He allows, as he says, the game to declare itself. How many teams really do that? How many teams operate from the standpoint of I'm gonna come in, I'm just gonna kind of feel this thing out, okay, and then we'll move in our attack. Versus, no, we've got to put our plan congruently together. It's got to be detail driven. We've got to go and integrate what we're going to do, and then we're going to live within that structure of that game plan. And if we got to deviate out, boy, we're in trouble. If that plan A doesn't work, man, we're out of pocket that day. We better hope for a miracle on that day. With Mike, he's got a little bit more of that tactical patience in what he goes with his approach here, and that's even as far as blitzing. Some games you'll see him come blitz out the box if it's an opponent's weakness, but a lot of times you see with the blitzes is he may have a choice in another time or game that he's going to run it, but oftentimes he'll kind of just wait and kind of feel it out. He'll be probing a little bit. And his defense will still be solid. They'll still be holding it down, but he's just kind of feeling a little bit out of that offense and then able to kind of counter them. I don't think a lot of teams can counter. I don't think a lot of teams got the plan B that they can go to. I think we got a lot of plan A suckers out there. The guys, they got to put the game plan together through Monday through Friday, and what they got on there, that's what they got. And they don't got a lot else beyond that. But the tactical patience with Mike has been something that I think has stood out. How many people were lauding him, not outside of Seattle, just out there in the NFL world post Super Bowl for taking the points? Like everybody was marveling at it. Can you believe it? Mike took the points. At the beginning, he was taking the points. And it was blowing their mind. And it's true. They weren't wrong. It was just this shows you how far the pendulum has swung in the area of aggression with these other coaches and their willingness to do too much. To be going for too much, to not take the points, to not just keep stacking those points up. And there'll be a larger point of play with the stacking the points. So remember this part of it. But Mike absolutely leans into this, and it's just one of the phenomenal parts of his head coaching that sets him aside, I think, from other coaches out there. Balanced offense. If I'm going to confuse you offensively speaking, I might have personnel groupings that look similar. I might have everyone formationally to look the same, so there's no pre-snap tells to the defense. The old thing where the offensive lineman, if it's a run, then they're putting their hand in the ground and their knuckles start getting white because they're leaning forward. And if they're back on their heels, then the knuckles won't be white. Remove all those little details out of the structure of things. You can't tell what's coming. But if you pass the ball 60% of the time, doesn't make much of a difference, does it? Defense is still going to lean to that pass. They're still going to lean to taking that thing away that you do really good. You do it really good, but now it's been neutralized just a little bit because you can't balance it off enough to keep them flat-footed prior to the snap and not able to take that cheat step in the right direction, I should say. Last year, the Seattle Seahawks had 481 passes, 511 rushing attempts. So near perfect structural balance in the play calling last year of 50-50 just about. And as much as you probably would have if it wasn't that you were up and ahead in so many games and just running the ball 24/7. Probably passing would be a little bit ahead of it if it was all said and done on that side of it. But getting to 50-50, now when teams are looking at it and they're trying to predict what you're doing offensively, they've got to start from a position of understanding this isn't a team that just wants to run the ball by their motivation or how they've told us that this is what they think their philosophy is going to be. We can look here in the brass tacks numbers and see that prior to the snap, I truly don't know. It's literally 50-50. It's literally flip a coin before I get to my play call as to whether I can anticipate run or pass. And that's one of the things that's just going to make your offense that much better on a couple different levels. Of course, number one, you're running the ball consistently, which shows you're going to be able to control the clock, which is going to help, which is going to obviously then get you into more third and shorts, more consistent drives, less of the getting off the field, which again further just helps out the clock. But is also as well, it has even more cascading effects. because when you're having enough runs in there and you're not pass happy at that like 55, 60% range, well, now those defenses can't pin their ears back. And now your pass protection starts to look better. Yeah, our pass protection came way forward this year. But do we think those guys got that much better in their performance? I mean, I know Benton's doing miracle work out there, the offensive line coach, but do we think that it went that far? Because remember last year with Geno Smith, well, he's second in the league, first in the league in sacks, under as much pressure as anybody in the sport. And then Sam comes back this year, and despite the fact you spent 3/4 of the year being blitzed at the highest rate in the football, you got probably still top 3 by the end of the year. You still were really good as far as your pressure rate. Sam barely got sacked compared to Geno the prior year. Did the offensive line just get phenomenally better in their ability? Because you didn't change anything out. Abraham Lucas, Charles Cross, Gray Zabel, you got him in there for sure. But then you still got Bradford back, and Sundell played a little bit the prior year. So you got some improvement from him, but you didn't add, other than Zabel, any real huge piece over the top on that to make it better. It got better because the offensive balance got right, because defenses couldn't cheat. They couldn't anticipate pass because you threw it almost 70% of the time the prior year. And that caused the opposite thing to happen. If the balance 50-50 can help in keeping defenses kind of at bay, when you go to the 70-30 split, now you're completely throwing your offensive linemen under the bus, quite frankly. Because you're just putting them in a position of making it impossible to pass protect. The defense almost knows what's coming at that point. To show you again, some of the best teams in the NFL last year had running some of this balance. You have Green Bay that was really good at this as well. And as far as, again, too, the run is going to be the blue. Pass is going to be orange. So Green Bay 50%, 49.8%, almost 50-50 for them. Washington was surprisingly good in the run pass rate, though some of that comes back to you've got a mobile quarterback. So you're going to get some rushing attempts when you have pass plays called, but he's just going to run with it anyway on that side of it. You got New England in there at 49.6%, 50.4. They were up in a lot of games like us, and they had a mobile quarterback, so that did contribute to a little bit of their balance there. But what you do see, I think, universally here all the way through is you've got 4 of these 5 teams all getting in the playoffs this year, and having some playoff success, not only getting within the playoffs. So worth noting as well that those teams that are balanced, it is pretty smart to do so. One second. All right, as we move on, 3 and outs on the regular. This goes back to the defense. This goes to another thing that I think that other teams, and I'm going to have a big point to this that I want to mention on this, on just the grand designs of what we do structurally team-wise, which other teams are not chasing. It's going to be the key kind of, if I call it the crown jewel of this argument I'm going to be making. So stick with me on this, because this is going to be a big part of this. This defense gets the 3 and outs across the board at a pretty decent rate here from the last season, and this is going to continue. When you look at the third down defensive rankings last year, the Seattle Seahawks were 32.71% at getting off the field on third down. That is the best rate in the National Football League. Houston at 34.14%, New Orleans at 2.7%, the Chargers at 35%, Denver at about 35.5%, and Seattle at 32.71%. So the best team in the National Football last year in third down and getting off the football field. As well, percentage of defensive scoring drives. So percentage of times the drive ends in a score. What is your percentage? You want the lower percentage, means the better. The lower percentage means the fewer times teams are now scoring against you on average every drive. The Houston Texans were the best team in the NFL at 27%, call it 28%, or 27.6% of the defensive drives that go against them ended in a score. The Seattle Seahawks were 28.7%. So about 1 percentage point above Houston at number 1. They were number 2 at limiting scoring possessions in the National Football League. Now, just on a percentage basis, which I think is an important note of that when you're trying to calibrate that one. So we're going to be making this point as I'm going to build this up here a little bit. Structurally, the new kickoff rules in the NFL now have you at the 35. You have an offense that's going to be driven to being consistent, that's going to be balanced, that's as much about getting drives, moving the ball. They're not as much about having to find the big play. They've got that within them, but it's not the centerpiece of this offense and what's a necessity. You're at the 35-yard line, 2 first downs get you up there and get you into a scoring position. You've set your offense up to be that kind of offense that accomplishes that on average. And if you look at the Seahawks offense and their scoring drives last year, and especially when it was games when they were still in the game having to score and having to go out there and move drives, and people look at like games like Indianapolis as this bad game for them offensively. And yet Seattle had just about a scoring drive on, I think, like every offensive time they had the ball. I think they scored, but like 1 or 2 times. Just happened to be a field goal. Now you want touchdowns. This is a whole nother argument. But the point being is that I've got a stifling defense, and I'm able to have an offense that's just consistently even just pecking away at you all day. But they are pecking away. It's a legit peck every time. Here's 3. Here's another 3. Here's another 3. Oh, here's a 7. There's a 3. Boom, there's another 7. And suddenly you stack the points up. So when you talk about getting these married together, you start at it further down in the football field now with the kickoff rules. You got Rashid Shaheed now with the danger of what he supplies, as we saw throughout the playoffs. Those teams that are crappy at playing special teams, pump it into the back of the end zone, puts the ball out at the 35-yard line. Now you got the short field, couple first downs, you score. If the ball goes back to the offense now, your defense is on the field here. This defense is set up unlike the prior defense, and it's no shot at the prior defense, as it might sound like it's shade. It's just a stylistic thing. And this is why it works together well. There are a lot of defenses, and I think if I was to point to you throughout the NFL, the majority of teams in the NFL are set up, in my opinion, to be bend but don't break. And why they're that way is because of all the ground that offense gained through the years for about 15 years in the NFL, 25 years in the NFL, where every year the offense was getting more and more. And the defense got to kind of a defeatist position where they just said, why should we try to keep ourselves up with the Joneses here? Because of the fact that like the rules are keep bending towards the offense and making it harder to play defense. Why don't we keep up with the Joneses by making our offense match? And we'll get by kind of on defense. We'll get by with our defensive approach, and we'll just kind of try to force them to execute, and we'll try to prevent the big plays. And there was a little bit of this like roll over and show your belly thing, but just don't give them the fast approach to go get there. Don't give them the one play down the field to go get there. And this has been I think a little bit of that thought there from defenses for so long. And I think in Macdonald's defense, what you can see is that there's a willingness of, no, we want to get you off the field. So why this works well is for the same reasons that it helps your offense. Having an offense that does get the consistent drives as a basis center point, having a defense that gets the offenses off the field is so much more important now in this day and age than ever before because of the kickoff rules. Because now I give up those 2 first downs and it's no longer a punt after that because I started you out from the 20-yard line. Now those 2 first downs put you in field goal range, scoring range. And Macdonald's defense is well suited in how it's structured in this way to be more about it being stifling in its approach and allowing to get you off the field, get it back to our offense, allow the offense to go get more of those consistent drives and get those consistent scores. And this is how it all starts to work together collectively. And this is what other teams don't have anything close to. You can show me a team like the Rams that have the amazing quarterback and a built amazing offense, and they're hoping the defense can do enough from this and that. And then let's just throw the resources at the corner position and maybe top it off. But it's not visionary, the approach. I got the 49ers holding on to the geriatric home, trotting them out on their walkers, hoping that they're going to somehow make this happen. That's not a visionary in its approach. You got the Eagles that the best they can do is just keep burying void money year down to 2050. They can't decide which player they want, which player they want to let go. They don't know if they can keep an offensive coordinator for 9 months now at this point. These teams don't have this kind of, certain kind of application. And I think the Eagles kind of were coming close there with some of what they were doing with Hurts and the balance he was striking in the RPO option game and how much they were running the ball. And then defensively, they had some similarities to what we did, but their stuff is kind of loosened out. The defense isn't as good. It isn't as dynamic in what it's doing. They need to deal with their edge group. And offensively speaking, they're not running the ball as good. And they've lost some guys on that offensive line over the years. And are we going to let go of A.J. Brown or not? It's one where there are teams that are running okay in their approach, but I don't think they're being this tactical with what you can see Seattle does on this approach between the offense, defense, and special teams. And it does work back then to when you look with the special teams impact on this field position mastery. Because if I know on a short field, couple first downs with the way that these field goal kickers now can boom it from 60 yards out back in Timbuktu with a 15 mile an hour headwind. And they can put it right through the uprights with 5 yards of extra distance. With the way that that's gone now in the modern age, and with the way that now you start up a little bit further up the field on the field position war game, all the much more important now, isn't it? That you got a guy in Myers who's got the leg to get up high and drop it in to where you guys can come up and cover before they can get up on the field there and set those teams up on a long field at that point. He also showed off a little bit of the squib kick there, where he'd punch it up past the 20-yard line, get it to roll, and that was messing with kickers, caused a fumble, caused the touchdown in the Steeler game on the back of that. You got Dixon, who's got as big a leg as anybody in the National Football League. How much was he being hyped up after the Super Bowl as well? As a lot of people were saying that he could have maybe have been the MVP of the Super Bowl. And that's coming off an all-pro season, by the way. Coming off an all-pro season. It's not by accident. It's by how you've structured it. It's purposeful. Myers is amongst the highest paid in the sport of his position. Dixon's amongst the highest paid sport at his position. You tactically wanted to make this, and then you look back to last year. Niners still kind of figuring out their field goal kicker. All right, Eddie will finally work. Panera will finally kind of work. Let's get Sky Moore just at the end of training camp. Let's get this guy in just the last minute because it's just not working. We need somebody in here who can fix this. It's just, oh my gosh. And then you got the Rams, whose whole special teams was a nightmare. As I like to joke, the 2-point conversion in that game was so traumatic to them, was so horrible to them that they had to fire their special teams coach the next day. You don't think special teams matters? At your own peril in this day and age, because now, as much as anything, they've tried to increase as the NFL special teams mattering more by the nature of the rule changes. And Seattle is ahead of this curve, already having those positions settled. When the Niners are having to put a 3rd-round pick into the position that it eventually flames out, you had the position settled. And so you have field position mastery at all times with this, not a kicker that's not only good at what he does, but a guy that, of course, can boom it out there from 60 yards out as well, has the big leg on top of being accurate. Oh, by the way, last year, Myers set a record, most points scored in an NFL season with 202. And then he had 5 field goals in the Super Bowl, which was, of course, also a Super Bowl record. Oh, by the way, does it matter? Yeah, it matters. Does it get overlooked by a lot of teams with their approach to the position? You better believe it does. You better believe it does. And Myers is coming back next season, and Dixon's coming back next season, and Rashid Shaheed in the kickoff coverage games come back next season. J.R. Arbaugh's here as the special teams coach next season. I ain't going nowhere. None of that's stopping. But it all works together. That consistent offense that can consistently move the ball, that, as we saw with the version of Sam Darnold down the stretch, protects the ball, understands that the turnovers and stuff needs to be limited. Let's keep getting this thing up the field. Balanced offense, scoring consistently, and a defense that's stifling, and a special teams that can control the game around that. That is a Super Bowl team. Good offense, elite defense, equals special team, equals Super Bowl. Couple last just extra points here. This goes a little bit back to the defense. You're watching teams chase this all offseason right now. You're going to watch teams chase this in the draft. You're going to hear them talk. Who's the next Nicky Manwari we can find? Why do they want Nicky Manwari? Is he a great player? Yeah. Has he got superstar potential? You better believe he does. Is that what they're doing? Yeah, there's a little bit of that, but it's also, how can we live in nickel? I want to live in nickel. I want to never have to move out of my base personnel, and I can be base personnel in nickel, and I can still hold up against the run. I want to play nickel defense and kick the ever-loving crap out of an offense that's rocking 12 personnel against me. I can have an offense that says, we're going to go 2 tight ends. We're going to go 2 tight ends against their candy ass nickel formation with their spread out splits on the defensive line. How dare they think they can do that against us? With a 300-pound nose tackle? Sure. Fast forward. What the hell happened? What the hell happened? They should not be able to do that. They should not be able to. Did somebody else come on the field? I think somebody else come on the field post-snap. Was somebody watching for that? I swear to God, it felt like somebody came off the Seahawks sideline and there was 12 guys on the field Well, it's kind of what they say, coach. 12 is 1. Shut up! Just a stupid slogan. But maybe they're also cheating. Few teams can live a nickel. Teams are going to try. Rams are chasing this with McDuffie. Slide him occasionally into the slot. Can we move him around? You can't replicate Nick Eamon-Warren. This style of guy don't come around very often. You can find a guy that might be the Simmons type that came out of Clemson a couple years ago. They got the size, speed, build, explosiveness, but they're not the player Nick is. They're not going to have that level of intensity he can or put it all together on the field like he does. And he is only getting better from here. But his ability to have Byron Murphy up front, the nose tackle position, along with Leonard Williams, and your two edges that can keep things clean up front with all of the extra beef teams will throw at you, because that's how teams attack it. They see a nickel and they say, okay, we're going to come at you with base. Here comes I formations. Here comes 12 personnel. Here comes 13 personnel. And Seattle doesn't flinch. It was awe-inducing when I watched the second game against the Rams last year. And you watch the Rams go up against our offense and they've got the 3-4 defense out there. All those bodies up on the line of scrimmage. And here comes the safety creeping down to the line of scrimmage just prior to the snap. One more, Los Angeles. You need one more? Yeah, we do. And then you'd go over to the other side of the ball after a punt or score. And there's Seattle's defense, early downs. Rams come out, 12 personnel. And you got these 4 mere bodies up on the line of scrimmage, spread out wide like that. And you just sit there and shake your head and go, how are we doing this? You got Eamon-Warren. You got the linebackers. You got the safeties on the back end. You got the guys that maintain their gap integrity in this defense, which is the requirement. Everybody's got to hold the line. You got to fill your hole. And this defense does so on a consistent basis, part of why they're the best defense in the National Football League at stopping the run. Doing so from a light box. Not doing so like Denver Broncos can be good about stopping the run. The Denver Broncos run a lot of early run blitzes on early downs in anticipation of the run that turn into pass rush blitzes. But a lot of what they do in stopping the run has to do with the resources they're putting down there, the congestion they're putting down there to stop it, which is effective and fine. But of course, then you're leaving yourself vulnerable and exposed on the outside for teams to attack you deep. Now, Broncos have guys on the outside like Surtain that can hold up to make that happen, and we do too, to a certain degree. But we just go about it a different fashion than others can't. They're chasing it. They're going after this style because of the value within it. Because when you can do this, there's no formational group you can throw at us that we can't basically counter to. We can stay in nickel even if you want to go to 4 wide receivers if we want. I can show you snaps like that last year. Just goes back to the versatility of this defense, flexibility of this defense, the variety of ways that they can attack and go about their business. And it shows up consistently. Nobody else can do it but us on that. And here's my last point, and then we'll get over to you guys in the chat here. Long-winded as hell today, I know, but man, I'm missing you guys. I need to catch back up with you guys here. The competition right now, in my opinion, is chasing players, not methods. What I've talked about today are methods, philosophies, approaches, specific ways by which this team operates that are on purpose, that have been evolved over time, adapted, distilled. When I look across this league right now, take this division, I look at teams and I see them chasing holes, chasing things. Rams go, well, our secondary let us down last year. Corners weren't good enough. We were taking cast-offs like Witherspoon and Forbes and trying to make them starters on the outside. That ain't good enough. Let's just throw a lot of money at the problem. Let's throw draft picks at the problem. That'll solve it. Is that visionary? No. It could work. It's not outside the realm of consideration. It could work. But is it one where they've been planning this for a couple years down the line and this is the whole, or is this sort of reacting to a little bit of prior year? And I think when I look at teams across this league, I see teams that are, not being many of them, but I look at basically this stock of teams that are the main teams that are really standing in the way. The main teams that could sit here. Now, there could be some team that develops up out of nowhere, like a Saints team or Buccaneers, or I don't really see it, but, I guess it's possible. I think all those teams could be decent. I still don't think they'd be the threat that any one of these other teams are. Bills move on from their coach, don't have any money to spend. DJ Moore is the centerpiece of their offseason, a move they've done many times over, going for an aging wide receiver that they hope's got just enough left to push the whole thing forward. Haven't really done a lot else beyond that. Aren't going to be able to do a lot else on that based on where they're at cap-wise. They got $12 million. New England Patriots, they're hoping to still go out there and make the A.J. Brown move. They're sort of sitting in the pocket waiting for the Eagles to come down to a reasonable place on that. Hasn't been a lot they've done beyond that. They've lost Diggs here now this offseason. I made super major moves. Ravens, it's a little bit of push me pull here with the Ravens. You bring in Trey Hendrickson, but then you lose Linderbaum. They also lost Isaiah Likely on free agency. We'll see what they're going to have with Humphrey on this. So it's maybe a little bit of like you gain some, you lose some on that one. Jacksonville Jaguars have decided to play the compensatory game this offseason. So they're letting Devin Lloyd walk. They're letting other guys walk, like Monteric Brown's all they've done this offseason to improve themselves. The Broncos, likewise, have just kind of sat pat outside of going for the Waddle trade. That's not going to make Bo Nix's foot any more healthier. Him of the, 7, 8 operations on that foot. And while it makes the receiving core a little bit better, it doesn't show the consistency of the running game, making that any more better than it was in the past. Broncos can still be a threat, but they've not done anything stylistically that seems to be a change in their approach this offseason. They're just kind of hoping what they've done is going to get some improvement going forward, which is kind of at the center of all these teams. Chargers, similar. Let's just hope our offensive tackles can stay healthy. Now, they did bring in McDaniels, which is a dynamic hire, I think, there for it. But we'll see how the fit between that and Harbaugh works, because those are not exactly two styles that exactly fully mesh. But he's a good fit for Herbert. Still haven't really done anything this offseason to, really add a lot extra onto this team it makes you significantly better from where you were. You're just hoping that the tackle health holds up in the way that it did last year. Eagles lost their edge rush. They've dangled Jalen Carter out there. They've dangled A.J. Brown out there. They don't seem like a team that's even kind of fully in this year, coming in with a new offensive coach. The offensive line with guys like Lane Johnson going to year 17 or something like that. I mean, he's definitely getting kind of up there, coming off injuries last year. Bears trying to get Max Crosby. They were in, then they were out. They go for Kobe Bryant, but that's at the expense of Jaquan Brisker, who played pretty good football for them. Did they really improve their defense hugely on the back of that signing because of that? Joe Thuney retires, their left guard, who played outstanding for them last year. He's gone now. Questions of their tackle position. Packers could be legitimate if Micah Parsons could play, but they're again a team that lost Rashawn Gary now this offseason. That's after they lost Ryan Clark. They're kind of Jair Alexander went out there a couple years ago. I know some of these guys were a little bit down at the end of their run, but they haven't exactly replaced those players either, have they? Josh Jacobs gets a year older. Is he going to be 30 plus years old now after all his mileage, even better next year? We'll see. Packers always seem like they're inherently just this close to breaking through, but they certainly haven't done a lot this offseason to take themselves hugely forward. Rams are going to be there, no doubt about that, because of as much they're returning everybody, and they've really put a lot down for this year to really go for it as far as how much they've spent. But it still remains on the back of Stafford. I don't know if they've significantly improved their special teams from where it was. We'll see if that does continue to be something that they kind of leave as a blind spot a little bit there. And they can still do some things, obviously, as far as their positioning goes. They're not having to be like 100% set. Though they do have a lot of contracts here, and that's where it's going to get interesting with them, because they've got $26 million remaining, and they've got to get the Puka Nacua deal done, the Steve Avila deal done, the Byron Young deal done. They've got some contracts they've got to get figured out. Kobe Turner thrown on top of it. All of these contracts are going to be significant money, and they've only got $26 million left. And keep in mind, they've got to keep about $8 million set aside just for the draft picks and for the, for the practice squad. So that number gets pretty far reduced down to where they don't really have a lot of money, more free money, is my point, to go out there and spend. And then the Vikings, if you think Kyler Murray or McCarthy are going to bring that team to the promised land, I've got a bridge to sell you. I got a bridge to sell you in Iraq. It's really inexpensive, only a couple $1,000s. No, I promise you, it's super inexpensive. As you look at this list and you look at all this stuff, there's teams, 9 coaches or something like that got changed by teams this offseason. 9 changes of schemes, 9 new systems, 9 coaches coming into systems, inheriting old systems that need the players for their system to fit, that the old players don't maybe necessarily quite fit into. We saw last year the rule of parity and the strength of what this league's been in so long being everyone's got a chance, and so many teams are so competitive week in, week out at any given Sunday, always being applied. And yet it started to feel a little bit like last year there was a bit of a shift, and that there was a poor that was poor and there was a rich that was rich. And there was more of a separation than ever before because of that. Partly why you get a team like Seattle to 14 wins for the franchise, first time in their history. Admittedly, that 17-game season aids in that incredibly. But we saw a lot of teams out there that were the elite teams that were able to really separate in that manner. My point on this being is that that's going to continue with this heavy change of coaches. It's going to take them time to get their systems installed. It's going to take them time to flip in players and out players that don't fit to what they need. And you saw that process already begun. And that always means you got to bleed a little bit on the front end to make it right on the back end as far as the team that conceptually is taking on that challenge. Seattle is not taking on that challenge. We have our coach going into year 3. We have a roster more firmly molding in around the way he wants it. And again, he's not a guy, I think, especially defensively, that has to be rigid in the type of players that he requires for his system to sail. But I look across at these teams and I go, what are these teams going to do? Maybe there's something they're working on in the background we're not seeing. I left out the Texans on that. That's a team you can maybe look at, but I still look at the Texans and I go, I'm still not sure what their offensive line looks like. I still don't think that that's been remarkably improved. I don't know if the run game is going to be enough. I don't know if their receivers can stay healthy. And they're a team that, kind of relies at times on a little bit of the difference makers up front, the difference makers coming off that edge. They lose one of those parts, it's like, poof, you're sunk. It's kind of like you're putting so much on the back of that. It's like the Niners putting so much of the weight of their hopes of next year on their roster, on the aged ones on their roster, on the guys that are long in the tooth and near the end. And they're wrapping the tape around their knees and they're like, just one more season, big guy. Come on, you can do it. I come back to, is that visionary? Is that you applying a super smart model of approach, or is there a whiff of desperation to that approach? To me, it feels the latter. So you can point to me all you want. Well, you go ask this guy, and then we sign that guy. So then now you're not good anymore because you're less good because that. Maybe. I say we'll see. We'll see. I got a lot of confidence in this team going in the future because this thing has been so smartly put together and the process is absolutely on point in every way. Hopefully I laid that out enough over this hour and a half to where you can see that the process this team has put together is a fully all the way around. It's how you manage the team health-wise, structure, spending the money, coaching, finding the edges they can everywhere they can, roster building, maximizing the cap space at every turn as you can. These teams are not thinking on this level. I know that there's that term that gets thrown around, 5D chess. But I don't see 5D chess being played around the league. Seattle didn't fall into last year, as some Niner fans would like to tell you, just because of our injuries. If we didn't have the injuries, man, like we showed in week 1, man, you guys wouldn't have done what you did. So doesn't count. It's like it's fake, bro. Okay. We'll see, bro. Keep yapping, keep talking, keep talking yourself in the fact that you've caught up. Keep spinning it. Niners are going to hand out all these contracts this offseason now. Not doing it yet. Going to wait. Puka, here's your 40. Puka Nacua. Steve Avila, here's your $16 million. Byron Young, here's your $25 million. Kobe Turner, here's your $24 million. We ain't won a Super Bowl yet. We're handing out those contracts right now. Not that those guys aren't well earned and given to them. Not that they haven't, it's not money you shouldn't spend. But remember, one of the things that gives John that true inroads is to be able to strike at any point in time, to hit when the powder's right. Strike when the iron's hot and hit when the time's right. And you can't do that if you've already spent what you've got to spend. Can the Rams do more? Can they always fiddle-faddle with the cap and find a way to maybe create some space here and there if they really need to? Maybe. But it's getting hard for them to do so. Meanwhile, Seattle can sit there at any point in time, and if ever a Myles Garrett type situation does rise to the surface suddenly, John can come in and jump in there with 2 feet. And then come in at this point in time, you can debate with me, there's no way Garrett could ever this or that. But if we just operate from the assumption that, let's just say right now, this moment here, March 29th, Myles Garrett becomes available. The price, the cost to go get this right now for him here versus what it would have been if he had become available just the start of free agency. And I think there's reasons why Cleveland waited to move the money down until they can get stuff done in free agency first, which is why they waited. To come back to, again, a team that's not working off a visionary approach. It's a little bit of a reactive, just what's happening day by day in front of them. You know, oh, we lost all of our offensive line. We want to move Myles Garrett, but we got to get this offensive line thing figured out first before we know we've got our plan right. And in the parts, let's sign this guy and let's go get this guy and trade here for this. And then we'll add this in here. Okay, now we push this bonus down the line and maybe now we can, do it. So you're in a position to strike. And I'm expecting, again, a couple trades to be eventually made before the trade deadline here with John on this team to add even more on top of this. You got the money to spend. John's not going to just sit there on a year you just won the Super Bowl and not do anything about it. But you guys let me know. You feel like the gap has been closed? Do you feel like this thing is not as tight as or as tighter than I'm giving it credit for? I'm not saying we're far and away, but I just don't think these teams have closed as much of the space as anything else. And I look at a lot of teams' approaches, and I just think there's a little of this and there's a little of that. And I don't see a uniformity in what they're doing. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to come and they're going to go right back at this year. They've signed Kenneth Walker to this big contract, but they still haven't really dealt with the offensive line in the way you think they would have done, knowing the success that it's had in the past, to really give Patrick the chance to be healthy back there and not have to scramble for his life, which, if I'm not mistaken, when he got injured last year, that's exactly what he was doing. And instead, they're doing a little bit of that thing we're seeing other organizations do, like, okay, Travis Kelce, come back for another year. Let's squeeze that final year out. We're not going to get a year ahead of this stuff. We're just going to keep squeezing stuff out. I'd love to hear from you guys, though. I've talked long enough today. Let's get you guys on the chat, see where you guys stand. I am super behind on the donos, so let's catch up on those here real quick. Feed me more Seahawks. Thank you for the $2 donation. Says, were you on the Zaza with that thumbnail? I was just having some fun, man. It's off season, You got to have a little bit of fun with the thumbnail. And so I was enjoying myself on that one. Yeah. Thank you, Phoebe. Longness. Thank you for the $20 donation, Longness. Very kind of you, brother. Very, very kind of you. I know it's internet hyperbole talk, but there is no hyperbole. I know that it's internet hyperbole talk, but there is no way the Seahawks are miles ahead of the Rams. Congrats on your title. Oh, title worked. The title worked. Well, that's where, to me, I know the games are very close. And I think if there is a team out there that is close as any team is out in the National Football League to the Seattle Seahawks coming up this season, I believe that it remains the Rams. So, if there's a team that's got an argument for not being miles behind, the Rams would have an argument for being that. But of course, to your point, the title, the Seahawks are miles ahead and nobody's close, except for the Rams are a little bit closer. I still think that there's a process that we operate with that I don't know that the Rams operate with. And that's kind of why I wanted to go through these segmented points to the show to start this, to really kind of go down and delineate, okay, what are the separating factors? I can tell you this and that, and then that's it. But what if I really can get down to some ground down to some things that are truly driving forces of this organization that are different and unique and separate this organization from the other? And I think that there is a little bit too much that gets put into just, pure and simply, these players lost, these players added, hence this team better. As I always say with football, I just never buy into when we get to simplicity in the sport, and that it's a sport of so much complexity that whenever people are driving to simplistic outcomes it always will make me bristle a little bit and push back and go, I think there's probably more to the story than that. But like I said, to your point, and thank you for the $20 donation, I think that there's some validity, certainly, that the Rams are closer. It was a little bit of a title thing. I do think that the miles thing really does apply to these other teams. And these are these teams that are the close to elite or considered elite going into next year. The Buffalo Bills haven't significantly helped their defense. The Kansas City Chiefs have basically melted their cornerback room. Chris Jones is older. I think they're losing a linebacker or two this offseason. They lost a safety as well. I mean, like, the defense is going to need to be kind of rebuilt. Offensive line needs to be rebuilt, and you're signing Kenneth Walker. It doesn't quite add up to me. A lot of these organizations and some of their moves with it. And then you just, beyond the moves, it's just like, okay, what structurally is this? How is this going to work in the next year with, like, the Ravens next year? What are you going to do to get this over the top next year? How does that defense get remarkably more improved without really adding more on top? I mean, you get Matabuke back, which will help because he was down for most of the year, but Roquan Smith's getting up there close to 30 years old now. Humphrey's getting old as a corner, and the team doesn't seem like they really necessarily want him there at his cap cost. Ravens are a little bit of a weird organization though, but yeah, I think that I do think the Rams, the Hawks were far and away the best teams in the National Football League last year. I think there was a real separation, and I think you saw that separation play out in the Super Bowl with the Patriots being the representative, and they weren't anywhere close to the class of what Seattle was on that field. And, but the Rams are really well run. I think there's a lot that they do right. I think there's a lot that they do that has a visionary approach to it. I think there is a little bit of that right now. We're at the Super Bowl window, and so this is instructing our moves, and then that starts to push you into a bit of a direction, just to a tiny degree, and getting a little urgent, and maybe even a little bit more urgent that you would like to naturally be operating within, because you are well aware that Father Time is winding down on Stafford. And doesn't mean you'll inherently make bad decisions on the back of that, but it does mean that it can often lead to that, because you're not just thinking as you operate and need to at times when you're making these kind of decisions of just clearly and simply of like, hey, purely the right move here for this and that, and setting us up right into the future versus let the future take a bit of the price, and we'll make up the difference down the line. Along this though, you're very kind. Thank you for the $20 donation. I really appreciate you for that. And hope you're having a good day out here. It's Sunday. Jeffrey Thistle, thank you for the $2 donation. Our roster has not improved yet. I've been waiting. Well, and this would be part of where we come back to, again, one of the initial points at the literal initial point, I'd say, Jeffrey, to the show today was our roster is not set. And I can understand certainly the people, wanting to see more being done. You have right now well over $33 million of cap space. You have right now still $500,000 of dead money. The Titans have $25 million of dead money. The Commanders have $20 million of dead money. The Cardinals have $73 million of dead money. The Jets have $111 million of dead money. The Patriots have $38 million of dead money. The Eagles have $51.5 million of dead money. The Eagles have $51 million of more dead money than you do. So not only is it that you have the cap space, you've got the very little bit of dead money, meaning you have the cap flexibility to create any kind of space you want to create. These other teams do not have that. And John is a guy that's shown his track record in the past with this, Jeff, is, a guy that will be willing to wait on this stuff and will, he will strike. He'll just wait for that strike to come in at the time where the price is right and not wrong. We came this close last season to seeing the Max Crosby deal get consummated for 2 first-round picks and the Rashid Shaheed deal be done at the same time. Now, those are phenomenal additions to be able to add at the deadline, but John would have done so knowing, I think the price will be righter here. The competition is a little bit less right here. The effect can have a little bit more right here. First, where we land right now, in March, having that done. But I would say, just you look back at the history, he's made many of these moves in the past, and we've never seen him, Jeffrey, going through a season with $33 million that he just sits on the cap, on the books. And he just kind of goes, well, I'm just going to sit with this money on the books. Kind of wouldn't make sense if that was his approach. He could have more front-loaded the Jackson Smith and Jigba deal. He could have not put the void year money that he put into the Rashid Shaheed deal. It's kind of one of those little tells right there that you're going to be aggressive somewhere, and that if you weren't your intention to do that there, you just don't put the void years on the back end of the last 2 years of Shaheed's deal after his contract's done. So I think they're going to definitely do something. Have the faith. Have faith. It will go down, man. Thank you, though, man. Even more Seahawks, thank you for the $2 donation. Is the 49er hype real or just speculation? What do you think? Well, I thought let's go back to last year a little bit. I said last year you have a very strong San Francisco 49er roster, a very talented roster. But I thought that it was going to be a roster that was going to be leaning very heavily on an aged unit, the elder statesman to carry things through. And you also had a little bit of some question marks about Brock Purdy's health, even going into last year. And I think all of that stuff really played out to be the truth of the season. You saw the health of Williams fray as the year went deep into the season, and as you'd expect for an older body like his. You saw McCaffrey had 2,000 yards, but McCaffrey looked nowhere close to prime version of McCaffrey, nowhere close to prime version of McCaffrey in the Niners. The best that he's looked there. He looked nowhere close to that. Got a lot of touches, got a lot of targets. Didn't necessarily, look like a game changer back there at the position. You see guys in Bosa who's had ACLs in the past, getting older, has another ACL. You have Fred Warner, not an old player, but last year played through a lower leg injury through the whole season, and then last year got injured. I think you have a roster that's got its age. Brock Purdy runs into injury again last year. All these things remain the same questions this year, and they're now even more so. Now they're in bold. Feed me. Because you're going to try to run it back the same way. You add Osa, that's fine. He should be a pretty decent rotational kind of defensive line there for them. Mike Evans, helps, but you lose Juwan Jennings at the same time. Is Mike Evans going to give them significantly more production than what they were getting from Juwan Jennings at this point in time of his career? Cumulatively, along with the injury, just another guy you're bringing in that's an aged vet that you're just like, well, let's just hope guy in his 30s is not going to break down, as we got to kind of lean on him to be our wide receiver one. Just kind of seems like you're setting yourself for a position where you come back at the end of the year and you're like, man, our roster health just couldn't hold up, man. What happened? It's like, well, yeah, you tried to rock it with a bunch of just old guys with injury histories. Duh. It's going to probably lead to a battered and bruised and broken, roster or roster by the end of the year. If they can keep it glued together somehow, some way, then yeah, they can, they can find the way there. But absent that, I think that's really hard to get that done, because I think that what teaches is that you're going to lose a couple of those guys, and then you don't have the depth reinforcements to fall back on. But I like Greenlaw brought back. It's a little pricey, some that you brought him back to get him in there, but like his impact potentially in there, just another guy, it's an older guy. You hope have you heard this theme before with the Niners? Maybe they can pull it off. Maybe that one team with just an old roster like this that can find a way to kind of just slide their way through. But you're going to have to kind of color me unconvinced on this one, because I just think that the track record of that is that a few of those guys are going to break down. You're going to lose a couple. And you just need the depth that you can call upon. The same kind of depth that we have on our roster. Oh my goodness. Long this. I am so sorry for being so long and late on getting the acknowledgement on this. Thank you for the $200 donation. What? Let's go. Thank you for that. You are unbelievable, Long this. Unbelievable, man. And thank you for that donation. As a Rams fan, man, I appreciate that. That's very, 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 very extra kind of you. Don't think I don't know. I've watched you for years, and like you, as a Rams fan, but you are 2020 looking at selective statistics. This argument isn't predictive. It is hoping the past is the future, and the past barely happened. Salient points, man. Salient points on where you're coming from. I think what I would point to is I don't have a lot of data when it comes to Mike Macdonald's defense, because he's into year two. I think there was a lot of the similar successes he had in year one that lend into year two, especially as you got the roster more reinforced. I think I also, in a lot of this stuff, am pointing to things that aren't statistically based. And that's why I wanted to cover things that weren't just, in fact, as I look through this, let's kind of go through these points a little bit here really quick. And thank you again for the $200 donation. Let me go through this. Let's check on these. Team is built 365 days a year, 24/7. That's just about philosophy and the team's approach. Versatile players, philosophy, team's approach. Prey on the weak, philosophy, team's approach. Replicated multiple times over, multiple trades. Proper positional valuation. Heavy trend in this direction over the last couple of years due to learning hard-fought lessons. Nothing statistically based within this. Player load management and injury care. Nothing statistically based. This is about philosophy and approach versus other teams. A year early rather than a year late when moving on from players. Drafting for value in the draft. Dedication to the line of scrimmage, dominance. That's about resources and maximizing your application of resources to both of those sides of those balls, and especially to the both sides of the ball. And especially, I'd say along this to making them be difference makers on those sides of the ball. Not just simply putting some investment in that, but trying to make both of those two things the dominant forms of your team, to be a driving forces of your team, to be the engines of your team. Player leadership, mold the game plan around confusion, opponent weaknesses and conditions. Tactical patience, balanced offense. That's balanced offense was how they executed this last season, but that's also the purpose of their approach and what they want to do. And in that purpose of their approach, while I'm showing statistics to back this up, this also marries with what they wanted to accomplish in training camp as far as here's what we're trying to do too. So it's kind of like, yeah, you got it succeeded, but you only succeed in it when it also is your philosophy. And we've had years in the prior, as I was pointing to in the comparison to the Ryan Grubb year, and as an offensive coordinator running the air raid, where you're passing the ball 70% of the time, where you just don't stylistically have the offense in place to allow you to run things the way you want to from a philosophy standpoint. And now you're doing so. And there's a lot of teams that, like we had the prior year, tried to operate that way, operate like that through the league, where it just stylistically doesn't always work together. And that balance is not always there. Because they're trying to drive and lean too hard on one thing or the other. So it is something that could fluctuate year by year for sure there on that one. So that's one of the items I definitely would give you. 3 and outs on the regular is another, that's a statistical item that certainly was more based on last year. I think that while the special teams is one that you could maybe say is a little bit based on last year, that's also about, again, it's happening on purpose. Like the same investment that's not there by your Rams at times in your special teams, we're putting that investment in the special teams. So there was like 13 or 14 points that I put in there. Maybe only 2 of those were anything that was statistically based. And that was really on purpose for the approach of this along this is because what I'm trying to show is that a lot of this gets into maybe a statistical reference to last year applying to next year, or you lose this player this year and then you only gain these players. So this equates to you being lesser. And it doesn't get into more of this. What is really a driving force that makes these organizations successful? What is it in the driving force, for instance, along this that's allowed this team to take 2 separate rosters with general manager John Schneider at the helm in 2 different eras and get them to a Super Bowl? Not only get them to a Super Bowl, but to create 2 really dominant teams and them winning that Super Bowl. How has he been able to do that? Is it simply just grade A drafting and he happens to luck into the right coach and it's very simple? Or is there a complexity involved there? And there's a level of detail and intricacy there that's not there on other organizations. And I think that I think your Rams team has a lot of stuff that would be overlap with these things that I talk about here. Take for instance, the looking for versatility. I think that you can see that in the Rams approach, as well, and where they look. We go for an Elijah Arroyo, this kind of move piece, chess piece kind of tight end that can maybe be an X receiver, H-backs, maybe sometimes an inline guy. You guys do the same thing with the Terrence Ferguson and how you're looking at the flexibility of him. So there's going to be some overlap here between the two, but I think there's a lot of organizations where there's not overlap. I think there's a lot of organizations where, kind of as I was making my argument throughout by trying to give some key examples of this and that and this and that, there's ones that go the complete opposite direction in some of these approaches. And it's what not only leads them to falling short, it's what then allows us to have an inroads, an advantage, or as the coaches and Schneider will sometimes say, the chasing edges, finding those edges the competition's not looking at and you chase. And there may be all little small things, but when you stack them up collectively it becomes something large in itself at that point, collectively speaking. So it's not to throw shade back at the Rams. And again, I come back around to it. Your point's true on the vet. Maybe there's not as much the miles behind as far as the Rams. I don't want to necessarily try to overstate it in that way. Sometimes you got to work the title the way you got to work the title in these YouTube videos. But at the same point in time, I do believe inherently in that difference that exists in these organizations. And I think that there's a bit of a slide in recent trends and what we saw last year and moving back to last year where I think the rich are getting rich and richer and the poor are getting poorer in certain ways. And that, if you're an organization that's not identifying these advantages across the board, and you're just trying to do it kind of by the old school method of hoping you draft right and hoping you kind of just get the right things hitting at the right time while not doing all this extra other stuff, you're missing a lot of other advantages other teams like ours are applying that lead you behind the eight ball right from the jump, no matter how you draft, no matter how you develop, no matter what coaches you find. So it's just a bit of that. And I think it's fairly predictive when you have the third youngest roster in the NFL pull it off. You have no major losses to your football team. You've gotten losses, but I think that the selling that we've had, monstrous losses, we're returning all of these guys that had almost both sides of the ball are just about starting all starters. Like Woolen was not a starter. If Job and Woolen are out there at the same time, Job's basically your 24/7 starter over him. But when there's injuries, Woolen came out there. Kobe was a starter, but Okada outplayed him when he played him. So one thing people want to talk about with the Bryant thing is like, well, at the very bare minimum, Okada played right at about the same level of Bryant. So if Okada's going to be in there, we're not losing anything there, then this all really does come down to Kenneth Walker at that point. And are people really thinking that we've lost this distance, all of this distance because of Kenneth Walker? A guy who most of these same fans that are nationally out there saying the Walker loss is a big one would have told you that Walker wasn't jack diddly squat if I checked in with him around week 10 of this past NFL season. They would have said, Walker's, he's fine. He does too much dancing. It's only after that last bit of that finish and flourish where now suddenly he becomes this guy that's this devastating loss for the team. So you haven't lost anything. Third youngest roster in the NFL. Macdonald, really young head coach, still kind of a first-time head coach, just moving into his third season. I think there's a lot of natural reason to believe that this progression will take place because of those things, but also because, like I say, all those items I brought up before that are all in themselves sort of individual and not statistically based, but organizationally, philosophy based, and that they are unique, I think, in this organization versus other organizations. And again, I tried to give examples on that for sure, on that where here's this org that does it this way, or here's that does it that way. But it is wild to me, and it's part of the thing that's opened my eyes here through the years in covering this sport even closer, of course, covering the Hawks and looking across the competition and what they're doing. I become more and more surprised as I go through the years at the level of incompetence, at the level of stupidity, at the level of outright sabotage teams kind of do to themselves simply by taking an approach that isn't trying to put being the smartest you can in your ways at the forefront. Other things end up superseding that and becoming the masters of your domain, and thus again end up restricting you of building a great team, in my opinion. Appreciate where you're coming from though along this. And you know what, man, I absolutely really appreciate your $200 donation, brother. You are very, very kind as a Ram fan dropping that in, and no shade at your Rams, no shade to you guys. It's definitely going to probably come down to us again. And you know what, man, it wouldn't shock me if it came down to another conference championship title game once again too. So I hope it does. Let's settle this. Let's settle this year again. Very kind of you, man. I appreciate you, brother. And you are amazing. $200 donation. That is unbelievable. Sorry, it took me a little bit of time to get to you too on the support. I get long-winded sometimes at the start of these shows. You know what I mean? I just start yapping and can't stop. You're amazing though, man. Along this, appreciate you. Best of luck to your Rams this year. You guys are gonna be in trouble. Jeff, thank you for the $2 donation. Nikki Manwari, a Hall of Famer. Bobby for the Ring of Honor. Well, there's no doubt Bobby deserves to be in the Ring of Honor, and I think with Bobby, you could probably make an argument, should probably have just the jersey number retired too. Nikki Manwari's got Hall of Fame potential. There's no doubt about that, and it's part of this thing that I say when you talk about this, I think it kind of just brushes over the top of people's heads a little bit. Third youngest roster in the National Football League won the Super Bowl last year. And you're returning almost all of that roster in full. Now, you can call me a homer, but I think that there's just a lot of reason to naturally believe that roster will improve just across the board You're getting another year of Riley Mills. You're getting Byron Murphy into year 3. Zabel into year 2. That whole offensive line into year 2 of the outside zone, which they were just learning the ropes last year. Sam Darnold now with a second year with this receiving core, rather than him just learning the ropes with everyone around him. There's a lot of reason to believe this young roster will be even better. And one of those guys is Eamon Wari. Every day in training camp, that guy was making a play last year. Every day in training camp, that guy's like getting a pick, doing something, just making your eyes fall out of your head. And rookies don't do that. Say nothing of slot guys operating from that position, safety position, linebacker. Like, he was all over the place. And I think as you see him get more and more comfortable in an NFL field, you'll see more of those kind of plays pop, where we've seen him already pop in the way of being a great run defender, a screen killer, a guy that can blitz the quarterback, but you're going to see the ball skills come to life with him. And if it can, then that gives him that kind of potential, Jeffrey. It sure does. And I think he has the ability to do it. And this team being on a bit of that cutting edge of being able to be the rare, unique team that can really, truly live in nickel in an era where teams still are not just simply trying to be pass happy, but they're trying to run the ball, and you're being a nickel living team. That can allow him to have just this perfect positioning to be that kind of impactful player in that way. So it's there. He's the young enough to do it. Absolutely, he's got the goods to do it, but of course, got to put it all together. Jeffrey Thistle, thank you for the $5 donation. Early polls have the Hawks third in our division again. National media fully lost the point. National media fully lost the plot at this point. Understand the Rams, maybe, but we handled the Niners. Yeah, I think with the Niners, we've definitely earned the right to say that we're above that team where they stand right now, point blank. But they're giving them, I guess, a lot of room for the fact that the injury situation was the big difference from their standpoint of it. I hope it continues. It worked great for us last year. I like the underdog positioning. I think it's going to be completely awesome to somehow be the Super Bowl winner. And yet you're going to be coming into this with everybody somehow acting as though like we didn't win it, or that I don't know. The energy and vibe's been weird at times from, it's been much, it was coming out from 49er fans a couple weeks ago with this talk, and some of what you're hearing with it nationally a little bit, where it's just like, the respect's really not there for what we accomplished and what we got done. And you're seeing it with some of these prognostications. And it just comes down to, again, that they're not really paying attention to us. They really don't know what we're doing. They don't know how we're built. The whole point of the show kind of today is like, this is how we're built. This is what we do. This is why we separate. And it is not just a fact of it comes down to John draft good, Mike coach good. It's not just a simple, like, small little couple things here that teams can easily adjust on their own dials and now be able to supersede. There's much more to it than that, in my opinion, inherently. But yeah, let him keep doing it, Jeffrey. Puts us in that right position, my man. Kind of funny, huh? Thank you, though, man. Appreciate all of your support. Snow Tiger, thank you for the $5 donation. Brando, John said he's building the best 70-man roster possible in an interview. I'm guessing need-based draft is back this year, given the number of picks. Well, I think it's an interesting question, Snow Tiger, because I think that this is the year that you're going to get that test really, really put into place. I would say that, as I was going through like on some of those examples in recent years and pointing to some of the guys that, we look at some of these drafts and the guys taken in recent years, you can see guys that are taken in these drafts that you did have extra picks. I think kind of to the point of a little bit what you're talking about on, given the number of picks versus where we've been in other prior years. You have this draft, which I'm just showing the first 4 picks of this draft, but, you go from, you had a little bit of Cross and Cross a little bit, maybe new weed. Walker wasn't as much of a need because you had Rashad Penny on the roster at that time. But you came back and you went with Edge again after Mafe the prior year. Jackson you drafted when you had Lockett and DK on the roster. Witherspoon you drafted when you had Kobe Bryant and Woolen out there already on the roster. Zach Charbonnet in the second round after you had already taken Kenneth Walker. So we'll learn the answer to that question. And I'll be watching for it to see if they still stand pat in this direction. I will say, Snow Tiger, in my opinion, you saw them in need when John Schneider did not have full control of the drafts. And I'm not putting this blame on Carroll. This is not shade of Carroll. This is just the brass tacks of what you've seen as far as a split that occurred. The drafts were running 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20. You're seeing these drafts run along, and they're all running with a theme. And like you said, the theme is to need. But what was happening at that time? We know that John was one of the few general managers in the sport who was not fully in control of his drafts. He had a head coach at any given time who could come in at any given time and overrule him on any given pick. Now, there's a combination there of deals. Maybe there was some of his bad, some of maybe Carroll's bad. Maybe Carroll never superseded. Maybe they're just all his bad picks. The one thing, though, that we know for sure is that the second the vice presidential duties got taken away from Carroll, not when he was fired, because he had the vice presidential duties pulled back from him prior to him being fired. And that the second that the vice presidential duties got pulled back was the second the draft started to be tilted towards value. So my theory on this goes, Snow Tiger, that once John was allowed to run the draft unabated, he was able to run the draft pure. He was able to get the best results. And that coming off now the greatest of success to win the Super Bowl on the back of that very strat, and on the back of that very strat that was built on the back of the change that came from you moving off of those old ways, I don't know that I can see him having to relearn this same lesson. And so we'll see. It's possible. There will be tells, I think, Snow Tiger. To your point, there will be tells. But I would be very surprised to see John, head in that direction. I will say the one thing that does stand out about this draft that's got to be taken into account by whoever they pick here, Snow Tiger, is it's not a strong draft. It's got some stuff that there's depth pieces to be added in this draft. I don't know if there's a lot of starters across the board to be had in this draft. I've been making the point over and over, and nobody's pushed back on this, that you're picking at 32. And if you stand and pick whoever you select, no other NFL team in this league is looking at those players that you have to pick from at 32 and saying, we have a first round grade on this guy left. All of the first round graded guys will be off the board by that point. And I'm talking not unlike, some of the NFL teams kind of think that, I'm talking 31 NFL teams to a man will tell you, Seattle's now looking at having to take a second round guy here at 32. And what's going to happen with those Snow Tigers, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be spouting off about, it's a first round pick. It's a first round pick. You go, okay, but are we not taking into account the value of this draft? Are we just sort of dismissing that because it's arbitrarily that 32nd pick? Likewise, you're picking 64 in the second round. So if you're already picking through second round talent when you land at 32, what kind of talent are you picking through at 64? That's a part of this puzzle that's got to be buried in as well. But I agree with you, man. We're going to learn in this draft if they can stay in this pocket, and every individual draft is open to observation and evaluation as to whether or not they're doing it and whether they're starting to deviate or not. So we'll see. But John has, one thing is, I think, undoubted, his last 3 years, John has almost obsessively maintained into this value-based model and mold. And it just brought in such great success. Just can't see how he would change from this now. I could see how Snow Tiger, for instance, he fell into the trappings of the problems in the teens because he was a new general manager to facing a young team that just won a Super Bowl and how to react to that. So it's like he got this opportunity to learn some lessons there within that. But there was lessons that had to be first learned. He was traipsing through ground that had never been uncovered before. But now he knows the lay of the land. He knows the trail. I would think. But we'll see, Snow Tiger. We'll see. The more Seahawks, thank you for the $5 donation. Feed me. Brando, you have a Mariners show. Jake has a Yankee show. Any chance we get a cool crossover breakdown of a baseball game for some interesting content? Maybe at some point. I'm sure I could talk Jake into it. I'm sure it would quickly drift into football discussion pretty quick. But I'm sure Jake would be down for it, man. And if the Mariners get back in the playoffs this year, I'll definitely be streaming the playoff games. I'll try to get a couple of Mariner playoff games this summer broadcast out too on the channel because you guys seem to like that. So it's a great suggestion. Absolutely great suggestion. And I'm open to it for sure. I'll see if I can kind of make something happen there with that. Megan, thank you for the $20 donation, Megan. Very kind of you. Let's go. Ooh, thirsty. Megan says, eyes deep in spreadsheets after the week from hell last week. Have missed most of the shows this week, so I have no idea where I am or what's going on. But I'm so hyped for what's to come. Oh, your Lombardi's on the list to be made. Let's go, Megan. Let's go. Megan's getting me a little replica done up and sent my way out there from her friend, and I am stoked for that. That thing's going to go right up over here next to Pumpkin. Maybe she'll be holding on to it, Megan, holding the Lombardi like this, like she's climbing up it, something like that. But you're awesome for that, Megan. I really appreciate you, and hopefully this week's a little bit easier on you for the week to come up, not as much of a challenge. But thank you for the $20 donation, really kind of you. Hope you're doing well. I got something to send out to you too as well. I've been late in getting out to you, but we'll get that out to you. I got to touch base with you too offline on something, so I'll touch base with you later on that thing. But not a lot's been going on. It's the teams made their signings in free agency that they needed to sign. They didn't do anything outside of free agency. They're going to wait past that period where the compensatory system kicks in just nice and right. And with that, they're then going to probably make a couple signings down the line at that point. But John's still going to strike, but he's just maintaining right now and letting things kind of play out, letting these teams kind of expend themselves, exhaust their cap space that they have, and just be in a position to jump when the time is right to jump. And I think he's going to find that time. I think something's going to present itself. This league is just so in constant state of moving and ebbing and flowing, and it's just never something that's in stagnant. It's like a moving river at all times, and you're always, the tendency is to kind of get locked in what was and where things are at for sure, and this is going to remain, and then suddenly this changes out of nowhere, and it's part of what makes this league so fun is that just wild stuff is always coming up. Guys are always suddenly becoming available you wouldn't think, or this situation went sideways that you thought was just fine. It's very weird like that, but it is a reality of things. So luckily, Megan, you haven't missed much on that side of it. But thank you for the $20 donation. Appreciate you guys, all of your support today, and really, really kind of you guys for that. Let's jump into you guys here on the chat. Again, if you can for me, hit this like button today, as it does help the channel grow. I know I ask you to do it a lot, but it does help the channel out. People looking for Seahawks content, this pushes it up onto their feed when you hit that like button, and I really, really do appreciate it. I do want to, as well as throw out a little bit of a lure out here. We'll be doing a little bit of this announcement here, and we're going to be starting to expand a little bit of the Hawks Nest here. I would like to start getting somebody together for some video editing work. So if you happen to, it's going to be kind of a combination deal. So if you find yourself someone that wants to look to get in this deal and whatnot, kind of help you out on some of the coaching stuff with this. Going to need to get some video editing working on this, though, as a centerpiece in what you do. So if there is anybody out there right now that is potentially interested in doing this, it's going to be a hearty amount of work. So get ready to strap on in, but is looking to be paid, looking to pay, not looking for just interim interns. We're looking to pay for it. But if you're looking for some video editing work, please reach out to me at heyhawksnest@gmail.com or at Seahawksnester on Twitter. But heyhawksnest, plural, Hawks, HAWKS, heyhawksnest@gmail.com. You can find it in my about section here on the channel as well. Reach out to me if you are open to doing some video editing work, because I'd like to start getting some things expanded here on that front for the channel. One more dono here, and then we'll jump over to you guys in the chat. Chad, thank you for the $10 donation. Chad says, laughing out loud. Hey, bro, this is for Pumpkin. Hands off for you. Get her some nice, yummy snacks. Oh, Chad, you better believe it, bro. We'll get her right after this stream. She's been waiting on me. She was wanting some love earlier, and she's annoyed with me because I trapped her Godzilla lizard and threw it outside. So she's a little perturbed with me at this moment for taking her plaything out. But I will get her some yummy snacks, man, as a little bit of a consolation prize for the loss of the lizard. And thank you, man, for the $10 donation. Very kind of you, brother. She is well fed, this Pumpkin. Her newest thing's been the churu. The little churu things where you just squeeze it out. She's been sucking those things down like a bottle. Just like, oh my, do you already take that thing down? Like, yeah, give me another one. Give me another one. All right, let's pop over to you guys here in the chat. See where you guys are at here. I'm gonna be a little behind here. If you got a question for me, hey, Brandon B, Hawks Nest, Brando. I kind of respond to almost anything. But then I know you're just not chatting within the chat, and I can respond. Doom, didn't Rice get to use number 80 after he was retired for Largent? He got to use it. He shouldn't have used it. And Largent didn't sign off on it. Shiva says, I think you're underestimating how much having Fred Warner and Fred Warner back will help. Yes, they're worse than the Seahawks, but they may be better than they were this year. But yes, they were worse than the Seahawks, but they may be better than they were this year. It's possible. The thing that's part of why I pointed to with Fred Warner, it's not really about ability for Fred. He is getting older. And now this is back-to-back seasons here with, major injuries in both years. He played with a foot fracture in 2024 and now another lower leg injury again this year. And so, will he come back next year? And, I would say with this, Shibu, if the Niners are at 95% health, can they be a real strong team that can challenge us? I think they can challenge us. I think we're still better. The thing why I would still to say that I feel that they're still miles behind is because it's not that hard to anticipate the health injuries that are going to come up. Of McCaffrey, Kittle, Trent Williams, Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Bosa. I mean, of these guys, we know probably two of them are going to be knocked out for a good amount of the season. And now that takes them down, even to me, you're down kind of another rung at that point, So I think I might be underestimating it. I think Fred Warner is a phenomenal player. He's the best middle linebacker in the sport. But I'm also leaning back a little bit on the track record of, these middle linebackers with back-to-back years like that with lower leg injuries. Do they tend to be at their peak performance best then the next year? I mean, maybe he will. Maybe. I don't have a long track record of that kind of situation playing out in that manner when those kind of are the parameters. But it's more than just Fred. It's just that I think that collective of those guys, it's very easy to see where the injuries are going to start popping up. And you lean on an aging roster like this too much, you can't be surprised then when you fall short of your hopes. It's not shocking at that point. It's, in fact, predictable. Bradford, man, the guy won us a Super Bowl. Can be thankful and still want an upgrade? Yes, you can. I think that's reasonable. Thomas says, heck, the restructure of Garrett contracts another reason why there's a possibility he could be traded. They saw what Crosby traded almost was. Now imagine Garrett being traded. Indeed, you can get a hell of a return back from the Browns' perspective. And I've maintained for a while this is what the Browns should do. This would be the ultimate smartest move I've in my lifetime, legitimately, with the first round picks they have set up for the upcoming draft. And that if they made this move here now with Garrett and moved him at this point, it'd be as smart of conjunctive moves I've seen from the Browns in my lifetime to finally set the stage to put together the right kind of team foundationally that can go get the job done. Not just in him trading to Seattle, but him trading to anywhere. But yeah, he has now kind of restructured the contract in a way that now frees this up. And I don't know whether or not he's going to be on our table. I don't know whether or not he's going to be available for trade, but it just goes to show you again that things can be very fluid in the NFL and they can move on a heartbeat. And you can think everything's locked in structurally where we've gone through all the players. Free agency's done. We've got all this money to spend and we don't have any money to spend it upon. Oh my gosh, we're stuck. And then you come around, something pops up and it's like, oh, this guy's up. Man, he's going to have a base contract that's through the moon. Not every team in the NFL is going to be able to afford that. Especially now at this point in time, after everybody's kind of already spent their money. But we can. We can jump on this with 2 feet. And that's where John, I think, is getting smart. It's a gamble. It's a roll of the dice. But it's one that I think John's done before, and it's really worked in his favor, keeping that powder dry. Mick says the Browns wanting to change the picks rule makes me think they're still considering trading Myles Garrett and know they could get a haul for him. It's possible that's what's pushing them to do this on the pick front. I still think that, when it comes to getting 4 first-round picks for Myles Garrett, I think they're living in a dream world at that point. I think with his age, you can get 3. I don't think you're getting 4. But yeah, I think that there's a little bit of some connectiveness to that. I don't think you're wrong about that. There's something afoot there, right? There's a little bit of some math that works. Roy says drafting best player works. Some of our worst picks in the past have been trying and failing to draft for need, especially in a weak draft. Amen. And that's where it's like as I was kind of talking this with Tiger on this with his donation, and thank you again, Tiger, for that kind dono. That's where I think with John, and I'm making, these are predictions. I don't know, folks, the final answers on some of this stuff. Some of the stuff is just kind of predictive, and John may flip on a dime. You never know, but he has been pretty consistent over the last 3 drafts, and he was pretty consistent the prior 7 or 8 drafts before that in the way that he was operating. And you just go through and you can first understand how I've got this gray roster. I have a dynastic setup here in front of me with this Legion of Boom team. I'm coming up in these drafts. I got my starters. I don't need to lock in that. Let's just kind of find the role players in around this. Oh, we kind of went for the low floor on this side of it. That's not the path of maximization here, really. That strat didn't really work out. Yeah, let's just drift back into value, and let's just stop looking at the depth chart and let's just trust who is the highest valued guy we got on our board. Let's try that as a difference. Oh, wow, that was successful. Oh, wow, that was successful again. Oh, wow, that was successful for a 3rd straight season after we just changed from the former methods. I'm going to change back. I don't think they are. I think you go, no, man. If anything, you put that pedal down to the floor, you hit that NOS button, you stick your hands up out the sunroof, and you let Jesus take the wheel. Micah Montgomery, team's trying to copy Macdonald, but you can't replicate a defensive mastermind. Well said, Micah. I don't have anything to add to that other than amen. He's a mind defensively wise. That's not that he has the brilliant scheme. And once you figure out his scheme, you'll figure out Macdonald. He's a guy that can change the scheme. This is a guy that, to me, if he needed to on a given season, could go blitz happy 18 ways from Sunday. And like he did this past season, if he has a front 4 that can completely live in the backfield over and over again on their own, happy to drop back the 7 in coverage and just absolutely wreak havoc with his coverages on the back end and when he tries to change and flex and spin. It's much easier said than done. And a guy that, again, too, I think just so many of these defensive coaches that are great defensive coaches are guys that are a little bit more of, I have my system. As long as I've got my guys that can make the system work, I think he's a guy that I can make the player work. I mean, Tariq Woolen isn't a guy that really fits his defense. Makes it work. Eamon did none of the stuff in college that you had him doing out there at the slot, really. And I'm going to put you in the greatest place that you need to be at, which is around the line of scrimmage. You need to be living around the line of scrimmage, not 12 yards off the ball. Indeed. Well said. Make sure I didn't miss anything here. Appreciate y'all watching today. A lot of talk here in the chat. I was pretty long-winded there at the rip on that. Pretty long-winded at the rip, gotta admit. Oh, we got a couple donos here. Megan, thank you for another $5 donation. Hawk says, now I'm worried about what you need to talk to me about. No, nothing big. There's nothing bad. Nothing good. I was going to ask you about the editing thing a little bit with it, but there was nothing too deep on that front there, Megan. No. It's all good. It's all good. No. I wouldn't be adding to your stressors right now. We're all good. We're rolling. War Chief, thank you for the $5 donation. B, I got my black cat, Mr. Onyx, this year on opening week. He's now my Super Bowl XL winning lucky black cat. He gets churros every night till next season. Go Hawks pets. Man, those cats love them churros, man. I don't know what they put. It's kitty crack in those churros. Like, they'll grab it with two paws. Like, you'll suddenly see them developing opposable thumbs in real time. It's like, did you just develop opposable thumbs so that you could work the churro liquid through the rest of the pouch? And you're like, wow. They're learning. They're evolving. But give Mr. Onyx a little bit of a pat on the head for me, War Chief. And congrats on getting a kitty. Cats are funner. Life's funner with cats, man. It definitely is. Like mine today. I caught the Godzilla monster and put it on in. Thing was huge. Yeah, dude, Monfey pick does mean comp pick for us. We didn't talk about the comp picks at all. It wasn't as much of it's kind of just a this year of a strategy as much as anything else, but definitely gonna be another one of those things that does help drive the impetus for John to do a deal, I think, at the trade deadline or in training camp, where he's going to feel like he's got a good 11 or 12 picks. I think you're at like 12 picks for next year's draft right now. So money to burn, draft picks to burn right now. Mick Brewer, Brandon, I've seen a couple of mock drafts showing that Boston might fall out of the first round. I know we have so many receivers, but if we go BPA, he'd probably be up there. I wouldn't be against going with Boston, as I was saying, and I might be proven to be dumb on this, where I'm not seeing this clearly, and that teams are going to reach for need in the first round. I mean, this is a first round, but it's really unpredictable because there's so few silver bullet first round picks that are so clear universally consensus, and that might lead to there being that variance of guys that fall the first nod. I just have a hard time seeing Boston fall myself, Mick. It is possible. If you're going to operate from a BPA standpoint, despite the fact that you're sitting with a roster of 5 deep at the wide receiver position, you would say, look, if I've got a first round grade on Boston, which I do, I mean, I'm talking about the Seahawks. If the Seahawks have a first round grade on Boston and there's no other player on your board that you have a first round pick on grade wise at that point when you're selecting, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking Boston at that point. And this is the thing with drafting for value, is it's not just a fun little slogan to say, because it's hard to live it. It's hard to live that life. And like, I already got 3 receivers, man. I mean, I could get Zion Young and go get my running back here. That's that reaching maybe for need versus the other side of it. So I think Boston's going to be a really good receiver in this league. I don't know if he'll be a star, but do I see him as being a guy that I have him first round graded, because I think there's a lot of the things that he brings to the table are the same things that Drake London brings to the table. I quite honestly don't understand why there's this big difference between the two prospects and what they bring. Both similar sized, both win similarly, and how they go about it. I think people get a little bit worried about the contested catch stuff in college, Mick, when that's the way you win so often. But at the same point in time, Teteroa McMillan won a lot of those kind of ways in that same manner. He did fine. London, Met McMillan, these kind of players that kind of comp back to a Boston a little bit, all had questions a little bit about their route running. And they had enough. They had enough route running on college. It was enough there for their size that they bring and the catching ability. So I think he'll be off the board, but he's there. I get it, Mick. It's got to go value. Value's value. I've got like 13 first round grades in this draft, and he's one of the guys on my list. So at least from my perspective, I don't know if the teams got him in the same point, but Visor of kicks, if TJ Parker or Jennings Dunker is available, I think we should take one of them. Love it, Visor. Don't have a lot to add, man. Love it. Either would be a right. Good value. They have to be in the Hawk. Do they have to be in the Hawk fandom? No, for the editor. No, I just, but I'm going to need somebody that I can work with and talk to. And it's going to be, I want to look to expand it pretty much in the future. So it's going to get real deal on that one, you know. Jeffrey says I only edit OnlyFans videos. Sorry, bud. Makes his man, Brandon Lenore, has been obsessed with JSN lately. He sounds just like the Weiner fans. How can anyone take him seriously? I don't know. He's got one of those personalities where it's just like, there's the guys that are the talkers on your team that are the guys that are annoying that you're like, well, when he's on your team, you love him. When he's not on your team, you hate him. And like people would say that about Richard Sherman a little bit, but I'm not even so sure that Niner fans really like Lenore. I think like even they look at him and they go, you know, as much as you talk, dude, you could really do a little more in the field for all that yippity yapping. And yeah, he's got this obsession with JSN, and there's some clips where JSN hit him last year on the field. There was a pretty widely dispersed clip where JSN comes off the ball for a block on the run game, and he smacks him in the chest, and Lenore falls down on his knees. And then you got the ugly moment at the start of the year where JSN's blocking Lenore, and Lenore backs him up, and then the play's over with, and JSN lets up, and he decides to throw him into the back of a pile. Kind of a move that could have like hurt JSN, easily could have hurt him. It was unnecessary, but you know, that's quite frankly just kind of how he seems to go about his business with stuff. So I don't take anything he says seriously, and he's not a good player. It's like they didn't match him up with JSN. You know, they got him operating in the slot. He's a slot sucker. Put him on the outside, you get that guy exposed. Like a slot-only cornerback that's not even dominant, that talks all the time. Yeah, 4 first, no one's worth that, Jeffrey. Not even Mahomes. I mean, you're talking about putting a pick so far out in the future at that point that could be so high in the draft. I can't see it. Daniel says Myles Garrett's 30. He's 100% not worth 3 firsts. He's probably has 2 to 3 more top years left than will likely be average. Yes, he will go from best in the NFL to average in 2 to 3 years. That's the sport. Indeed. He's getting up there in age, and it's going to be more for the short-term return you're hoping you're getting with that, Daniel, and that you can maximize that short-term. And there's a risk involved there if you do this. And I think that, I guess here would be my opinion on this, Daniel, would be that I think that other teams out there competing, to your point, would be of the realm of saying, I'm not going to give you more than 2 first-round picks plus some extra stuff. I'll give you 2 first-round picks. I'll throw you a player and a third or something, you know. I think if it's uniquely the Seattle Seahawks and that first-round pick you're giving them, the prime, here's the money you get in the bank right now, is going to be the 32nd pick in a draft that's not very strong. I think from the Browns' perspective, they're going to need it to be a little bit stronger of an offer to get it there more than just the two ones. So in a vacuum, I'm with you. If I'm picking 20th in the draft, Daniel, I'm with you. I think when I'm picking 32 and you're talking about those 3 firsts, I think at that point it's a little bit different from my perspective of it, because I just think, well, there is a risk. It would not be a no doubt about it kind of deal, but I do think in those next 2 years you have a real chance of separating yourself even further from these teams in the NFL in a major way, even if he does kind of hit that point. And I will say there's been those guys, Daniel, from your Reggie Whites on down to Julius Peppers, that have been able to be guys that still play at a very high level into their mid-30s. There are a good number of those kind of exceptions out there. I'm not saying it's the standard rule of thumb, but they've existed. Hey, kitty. Mixes I kind of want Cade McDonald with our pick. We have aging veterans and having a great interior D-line definitely never hurts the defense. Let's make this defense as nasty as possible. I like Cade McDonald. If they grab him with the first round pick, I got no problems with that, Mick. He's an ass kicker. This fit also has a black cat named Onyx there. Starting the tradition. Sorry for scaring you there, Megan. True spoiled cat. I am sorry. She's living a very tough life that requires her to do a lot of napping and eating of salmon, and that needs to be rewarded with churro. This is the way of the world for cats, Megan. The way of the world. She's a very spoiled girl. Sorry, Paul, you can't have pets. Thugs of Boston's there at 32. You can most likely use them as trade bait. That's another way of going at it too. And I'd certainly think trading back, we're going to be doing some mock draft scenarios here in the next couple of weeks, Thugs. And, you know, if you're looking from John's perspective, you can understand how he would, you know, very possibly like to try to find a way to maybe get some extra picks back in tow this year in this draft, being down a 4th and a 5th rounder, being down a 7th rounder. So that would also be a possibility within that, Thugs. You're right about that. Maybe a way they could go with that as well. Yeah, Lenore is cringe, Joe. There's like cool trash talking. There's witty trash talking. There's just, I'm a competitor and this is how I wire. This is how I get myself amped up kind of trash talking. Like, well, whatever it takes to get you, you know, ready for game day. And then there's just like, you're just flapping your gums to make noise. And when Lenore talks, I just feel like he's just like, must say something. Try to say something cool. And then it just comes off and you go, dude, just shut up. You're not instigating anything. You're not like, just, ugh. Makes you love him on our team and you hate him if you're not on it. Anyone else here in Puka here? Yeah, Puka's probably a bit of an example of that. I think though, to your point, Megan, I think he's testing some of the Rams faithful on this one just a little bit recently. Mike says, I recently remodeled my shop and made a little studio. I was contemplating live streaming about Hawks news, rumors, schematics. It's a lot of fun, man. I highly recommend it. Doesn't cost anything just to do it out, just to toss it out there. But I'm definitely looking to work with somebody that they're open to doing a lot of editing. I can help you kind of on the pathway with that stuff. It's a great community, man. Jordan, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, I see a specific X account always tweeting about a 2-game sample size that Lenore has shut down JSN. Yeah, it's I know the account that you speak of, he who shall not be named. And, you know, it's engagement is a kind of an awful thing in this day and age because it's just people post opinions and things that they don't really feel or believe because they know it gets. And I wonder with that particular one in particular, Jordan, you know, where it's like he knows what he's doing at this point. You know, some of the stuff that gets posted, you're just like, he knows what he's doing. And it's not good. It sucks, but it's like, it's also like not coming from like a true place of you believe this. You know, JSN, Lenore, as I was saying earlier, is a guy that's got to operate as a slot. Niners try him on the outside. It doesn't work with him on the outside. He's not good on the outside. JSN, of course, became more of an outside wide receiver this year. So the matchups just aren't happening between the two of them in these matchups. Not to mention the fact that Seattle in the second game is not throwing the ball at all because they're running the ball so well they don't have to. And then you've got sorry, one sec. And then you got so you're up at that game, you're just running the ball, you're being very conservative, you're not trying to throw a lot. And then you've got the second game where you blow them all out and you're basically like playing with the lead from the freaking first drive of the game. I Again, we come back. Simplicity in football. Things are always a little bit more complex as far as like the explanation for things, Jordan. But yeah, I've seen the account posting it out, and it's silly stuff. It's funny is that they were matched up like 4 times, and like 2 of the times that they're matched up, Lenore had to grab and hold on to him just to keep him from separating on him. So even in the few matchups, he still wasn't winning it. They'll show like a highlight of him holding onto JSN's arm in the end zone. They'll be like, look, lockdown, shut down. Like, all right, dude. Chase does even Khalil Mack, who was young, by the way, went for 2 firsts and I think a 4th. Yeah, that would be the reason this one would be a little bit more for the 3 1s, if it's just us specifically, is because, again, of that late pick. And then the secondary part is that you're not paying Myles Garrett on a new contract extension. So it's the difference between Khalil Mack and the Micah Parsons trade. Those guys had to be given a record-setting contract after you traded for them, which was going to lower down the compensation the team could get back in return. And Brian, plantar fasciitis, that's a brutal one. I hear a tennis ball under the foot. I don't know. Hawks nest, dogs have humans, cats have staff. That might be kind of true. No, I will say I don't have to walk my cat 4 times a day. JSN Flame Lemnor at the presser. He did what he said. I can't address all of my fans. One of our managers just stopped talking. Yeah, it's Lombardi he was referencing on the thing. Boy, he is a piece of work. Yeah, Megan, they're crazy with that Lenore thing, man. They're trying to make that thing a thing. Mick says, who's your favorite safety in the class, Brandon? Well, obviously, I think it's pretty easy to quickly go to Caleb Downs, and he stands out, I think, pretty heartily as the guy that's the best in the class. My favorite, just like outside of Caleb, maybe just outside of just, where you'd pick guys and just the guy that you just like, you just really love to watch and just fun tape to turn on. And there's something a little bit of a different about him that you can't always articulate an exact item of like quickness to speed, to athleticism quotient, just to get after its spirit. Emmanuel McNeil Warren is really fun. I don't know if he's a pure cover 2 shell guy fit, but his nose for the ball, his ability to cause fumbles, his physicality that he comes up with to tackle, he's got really strong ability and coverage on top of it. He's really fun for me, Mick. He'd probably be the guy that I would, go to. He's good. Jail says, I won't stop dreaming of fleecing the Browns for Myles. It's what the offseason's all about. I'm doing the same thing. I'm dreaming, man. I'm trying not to. I'm trying to but like same point in time, it's like it's not an empty dream, Jail, when you consider like your powder is dry. You do have those 12 potential draft picks moving up into next year's draft, where John goes, okay, next year's first is out the door, but now I'm only got 11 draft picks to make headway with. He's going to be in on it. He'll be one of the guys on the, Browns. You got Hawks on line 2. You got this team on line 4, that team on line 5. He'll be one of the teams on the line. 100%, no doubt about it. Yeah, Lombardi's a joke. It's like, I think as much as anything, because when you get to that point of that engagement farming, you're really speaking to what you think about the intelligence of the fans out there. There's something there's a statement you're making within it, I think. He doesn't believe it. Chase, thank you for the $10 donation. Appreciate you for that, Chase. Hey, B, I see they restructured Garrett's contract. I would love to get him. I think he's the best non-quarterback in the game, but I'm afraid the Browns aren't smart enough to go through with this. Well, number one, let's go back to front. You ain't out of pocket to believe the Browns are dumb. Like, you're never wrong to say, I don't think the Browns are smart enough for, and it could be like, where they do remember the underline statement they do in schools, Chase? It's like, I don't think they're smart enough to underline, and you could put anything in under the underline. It could be infinite anything. I don't think they're smart enough to develop a quarterback right. See? It works for everything, and it kind of works, right? I don't think that they know how to maximize a superstar talent throughout the course of their career. See, you can kind of like apply it like a Joe Thomas or Myles Garrett. So it's ubiquitous. It works universe. You just put whatever you want in the little statement there, and it absolutely works in there. So could I see there be a scenario where the Browns do not do anything with him and they just keep playing it out? He's a draw. He's a draw. He's a draw. Maybe. I do think there's a little bit of something interesting in moving this bonus in the way that they do, because pushing the bonus off now takes it from off their books now to putting it on their books in a couple of months, essentially. What's the point of that? And it seems like right at the front of that, the point would just seem to be standing tall of the intention will be then to move him. Because it's like half a dozen, 1/6 another. The money's still coming back onto the books. You pushing it off in this way gives you a little bit of time to maybe do some other stuff, I suppose. But you had $21 million as it is now that you've got, freed up as it stands, I suppose. I mean, it's possible there's some other reason they're at play. But I just kind of do feel like this is also the Browns, them doing it now. I was kind of thinking they would do this because what happened to them and why they didn't do this at the start of free agency is because they had to get their cap situation in the right place first, which was releasing everybody. They had to turn over basically their whole offensive line. They had to get some things restructured first before they get to the Garrett thing. And it was like literally like getting enough bodies on my offensive line first before I can get to this Garrett situation. And now you've done that a little bit. And so now you can, hopefully, afford to move in a bit of a different direction with this. Don't eat that, kitty. Don't eat that. Yeah, I think that they've restructured it for the reason of looking to move him. I do. I don't know if it's to come to Seattle Seahawks and whatnot, but I also don't think you're looking to restructure him at this point, the good soldier he's been, to move him off to a loser or to a team that's hoping maybe they can make the playoffs. I think you're looking to move him to a legit team at that point. To do right by him. I mean, you're going to want to maximize your return for him as well. Don't get me wrong there, but both of those roads could potentially be accomplished at once. So you never know when the stupidity of the Browns rears its ugly head, to your point. But I think that them restructuring like this, it's such an odd time. It's such an odd kind of restructure to do it the way that they did it. It would seem like if you looked at this historically speaking with other players in other situations, if you could find duplications of this, you'd say, well, those guys got moved. That was a harbinger that they were intending to trade him. I would think it would say that here. But this is a guess a little bit. And like you say at the Browns, never underestimate the levels of stupidity that they would stoop to. They will limbo. They'll do the limbo below that stupidity bar. You know what I mean? They'll be on their back, feet up to their freaking head like this, turned, twisted backwards, shuffling themselves under that limbo bar. It's like, well, certainly they can't get this stupid. Certainly they've hit the depths of their stupidity now. There's no further to go, is there? And they're like, no, we got this. Watch this shimmy. Mick says, I feel for Jesse having to endure these Niner fans. It's a real thing. You saw, if you guys were watching the NFC Roundtable, both me and Zbot we got grazed by Niner fans. I didn't even get hit by it. I didn't even get winged by it. I just got grazed by the Niner fans a couple weeks ago. I put out the whole thing with Brandon Ayuk. I put on Twitter, Niners are being petty. This is a stupid situation. What are they doing? And Jesse was like, he saw my tweet and he knew what he was doing. And Jesse's like, oh, Brandon, you watch this. And so then Jesse reposted to his Twitter, and he sends out all of these guys that are just like exactly what he has to deal with on the regular out there. Just toxic, not the deepest of thinkers, super touchy, little emotional. I do feel for him, man. I got the greatest fans on earth here. I got level-minded, rational, logical, funny, smart. That's a hellscape out there. You know what I mean? You guys remember Constantine, the movie? Like, I got to be a Keanu above ground. Jesse's got to be like, he's living in the Keanu hellscape area of that movie. That's Jesse on a daily basis in the content creation world for the Niners. And I do not envy him. Daniel says Browns would have to take $113 million in dead cap, so the only way Myles Garrett gets traded is with the tear up and a new contract, maybe 2 firsts plus Derek Hall. I'd rather pay Myles $40 million than Hall $20 million. Ooh, Daniel, you this is just what I'm talking about, man. You guys really put on the thinking cap with some of this stuff and getting into deep with it. I think you could see something with that. This is a way you could go. You know, where you go, okay, you're not going to get your bonus money here, and then we're going to tear this thing up, and then we're not on the hook for any more of the further bonus money at that, or we're not on the hook for any of the further guarantees on the deal. Bring this sucker up. So 20, at that point, you've got the bonus money there that they can't really do anything about necessarily on that side of it from a Browns perspective. But you've got option bonuses all over through the yin-yang there. There is quite literally $90 million in option bonuses, which hit in on this deal. There's a way to get this done, but to your degree, there's probably some tit for tat that has to be going with that. And I think that you bring up a way that you could get this done. It made a lot of sense. 2 first-round picks plus Derek Hall. I'm in that all day. Like you say, the $40 million for a year for Garrett at that point, well, that's expensive. It's like, yeah, do you want 2 Derek Halls or 1 Myles Garrett? Like, I'll take a Myles Garrett, please. Do you want 2 beef patties or do you want the filet mignon? I'll take the filet mignon. And we'll see if the Browns, I don't think the Browns are going to get that proposal to pass. I think the NFL could see so much fraught in problematic nature to the letting the extra first round picks on the board. So I don't think they're going to get the extra first round picks. I think they couldn't 3 first round picks is the max they could hope to get. And even that might be pushing it. Remembering here with Myles Garrett that he's not a spring chicken. Yes, he's a really good player, but guy's 30 plus years of age at this point. We don't have a lot of a baseline of, now we know a lot of players as good as him being moved in this NFL's history, but I still think that you're hard pressed to get a guy in his 30s that are going to be moved for 3 first round, more than that, or even up at that point. Especially when we start talking about the pay has to come back into play on this too. Mick says, hey, Brandon, have you seen people bullying Dan Orlovsky about his Mendoza Simpson take? Yeah, I think that one thing that I think that I really don't like about this whole draft process coverage, and it's one of the reasons that, in fact, in a lot of ways, I'm still going to get up over a lot of the prospects and look at a lot of the tape here, but I haven't hit it as hard this year as much as ever before, because you start to understand that a little bit of the going public and what they want from people is that they want kind of like glowing reports every which way all over the place with every player. And if you guys watch, check out how the draft pundits talk about players and how little they're willing to delve into the area of talking about, like, well, I don't think this guy's got this here. I don't think this guy's got that there. Like there is a pathway of like, I don't have to take any heat if I have this take outlook of things. And it's the simple, easy take. It's like we take this back to like the Lombardi thing and what he's doing. Part of what he does is it's the most lowbrow, low intelligent stuff. And a part of it's also housed within the fact that I never create anything controversial so that I never have to take any heat for my takes. I can just say great things are going to happen every turn. And if they don't, everyone's like, well, that's okay. You thought something awesome was going to happen and something awesome didn't happen. I mean, I can't fault you for that. But if they were being disingenuous and if they were lying to you through the whole phase of telling you that that was going to happen, then what worth of it is it that they give you that information? And I think with Orlovsky, what he's trying to do and what I was trying to do, I ran into this last year, is you want to evaluate these drafts. Here's the players I'm liking. Here's the players I'm seeing some issues with. Here are some flaws here that do exist. Here's the reasons I might have this guy above that guy. And I just find that the reaction to a guy like Orlovsky, who knows ball, who knows what he's talking about, the knee-jerk reaction out there that was there, and a little bit of the fighting I saw that was going on between him and I think it was McAfee on this, is silly. It's absolutely silly. And you know, you come down to it, both of these guys, neither of these guys really should be first-round picks, in my opinion. They're being elevated. Mendoza had a great college career, but like great college career doesn't make a great NFL quarterback. Those have almost no connection at all. And it's just kind of silly. You can find things in both their games with pluses and minuses. Neither are a lock solid, shining bright Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, first round pick. You know, they don't have that kind of heat to them. And people are trying to generate that heat for them. Why? Because every draft people want quarterbacks, because people are so quarterback obsessed. They want their QBs in their draft. And if they don't exist, you try to manifest them. We saw this with the Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, Kenny Pickett draft, right? Same situation where it's like, these guys shouldn't be in the first round. You guys are over pushing it. You're wanting a thing to be a thing that's not a thing in this year's draft. And that came out to prove out the truth that those guys shouldn't have been taken in the first round, and that nobody should have, like people have been talking about. But yeah, I think he's being unfairly kind of smacked around for this. And I think that people are, you know, falling heads over heel for Mendoza, and nobody's kind of acknowledging some of the negatives that do exist in his game that kind of are important when evaluating him as this number one overall quarterback. It's like one thing to be a first round quarterback. It's another thing to be the number one overall quarterback of an entire draft. And I think you've got to have that difference making level of talent to drive you to be that pick. And I'm not so sure that I see in Mendoza that guy, but I think he's being fair. I think people are being unfair to him on it though. Nia says, if John can somehow get Myles Garrett, I see no reason why the Seahawks can't be like the early 2000 Patriots, winning 3 of 4 Super Bowls, possibly more than they did. Indeed, it would be a move to take you over the top, defensively give Mike Macdonald a piece he has never had the likes of which even close to. And hard not to see that putting them over that range in that manner, Nia. You're right about that. That'd be an insane addition. Niner or Ram fans, they're both fans, have respectful fans on either side of it. Ram fans are a little more level-headed and even-keeled. Niner fans are just a little bit, I don't know if it's the years of the 3 decades plus without a Super Bowl, but they're just a little bit, they're wired tight. Let's say that. Micah says the Browns are like a farm system for contenders. Well, you know, one of the points I said at the top of this show, one of the main items that separates this team from another team, what's one of the things I looked at and one of the things I pointed to? I said, prey on the weak. Sometimes you got to prey on the weak. It's the reality of it. They say Niner faithful, says Seahawks daddy. I say Niner condemned. Kirk says, I would rather pay Hall $20 million a year than Myles Garrett at $40 million at this point in his career. That's fair enough on that front. I can understand. It certainly is. Hall's a much younger player. That's what it comes down to. I think also difference in production too. It's quantifiably quite different. Probably also when it comes to Hall, we're probably talking at this point, if Mafi's getting $20 million, Hall's probably 25. But the point stands. Jordan says Mendoza has 0 elite traits. Why is he the number one overall pick? Raiders should just take the BPA, which is an edge rusher. I would agree with you on that. I think the Raiders should be trading back, Jordan, if anything, because what you should be doing from Raider standpoint is, okay, Mendoza, you're 100% right on this. Mendoza, 0 elite traits, should not be the number 1 overall pick. People are quarterback hungry like hell. I've got a line, a carnival line behind me right now of teams that would be willing to trade up to come get this guy because they look at him in that fashion. Let's go take advantage of that. And let's get back to moving Crosby at the same time and maximize the draft picks to the nth degree, get more draft picks for next year's draft when there's better quarterbacks coming out. But not only that, when I'll have my first year coach with a year in-house there to get his system in play, I'll have a year then to now get the roster in better position from being what could be arguably the 32nd worst roster in the NFL as far as the talent goes to getting that raised up significantly at that point, getting that quarterback into a better position to succeed if I can wait a year to pick him. So yeah, that's what they should be doing, Jordan. If I was a Raider fan, it'd be frustrating the hell out of me. But as of course was kind of some of the theme at the top of this show, is just that there are teams that do sometimes dumb things, that they don't lean into intelligence like we think they would at every turn. Chad, thank you for another $5 donation, Chad. You're very kind, brother. If you were forced to choose who won the Super Bowl for us, John Schneider or Mike Macdonald, you can't say both, laughing out loud. All right. I would point to Mike Macdonald, and I would point to Mike Macdonald for a very certain reason that would be something that I don't know that John Schneider could get from another coach that he brought in. And that is that last year, what you had from those defensive players, and one of the points, Chad, that I looked at and pointed out here at the show today was like one of the things that separates Seattle truly and has us miles ahead of other teams is the leadership angle of things. And that you have, so many teams, so many players that leadership is a big part driven by how much ownership this team has taken on collectively. And I think what happened last year is that you had defensive players, Jaron Reed and Ernest Jones and Leonard Williams and Julian Love. And you had these guys come together and they go, this Mike Macdonald guy is on a different level. Like, we've all been around coaches and we've been all around smart coaches. We've never quite been around a guy like this. Like, this guy can uniquely put us up into a position to go out there and win a Super Bowl if we take care of our business, meaning that we take on the mantle of ownership in the way that it has to be carried. And I don't know, even if you brought in like a Mike Vrabel here or a Dan Quinn in here, I don't know if you would have gotten that same spark from this team in the same manner. And it would have really, because I think that was a real forefront driver to this team this last year. And that I think a lot of teams out there have a lot of guys that kind of clock in and clock out. I think you have a lot of teams that are out there that sort of do the bare minimum, Chad, where, I'm in on the times I'm supposed to be in here. I work out when I'm supposed to be working out. When I'm on the practice field, I do what I need to do. Who goes the extra mile? Who goes the other step? Who looks to his teammate and tries to pull him with him? Not just you're going to get there, not just that you're going to succeed, but you can take the guy next to you and you're going to take him with you. That level of ownership is what you're going to take on. And so I think Mike really, as much as being the brilliant tactician that he is and the great culture builder that he is and how he holds guys to account while still keeping the locker room connected to the process, how intense he drives these practices, all these things are great things about him as a head coach. But getting that level of buy-in to where these vets, these multi-millionaires that are closer to the end of their career than they're to the beginning, understand what they have at play here. If they can take care of their end of the bargain, Mike will take care of his end of the bargain. And that's not to undersell the job that John did, of course. That's not to point to John and say that he didn't do something phenomenal in what he did there, Chad. Because it's not an easy selection for it on this one, because John really did and it's going to be one of the shows that we look at this offseason, but just John has made so many phenomenal decisions over the past couple of years. It's wild when you look at it in just the full list of it. And I don't know any other general managers that get so much right and so little wrong during this time period. This is why you had the third youngest roster winning a Super Bowl this last year. But Mike Macdonald is in the second year as a first-time NFL head coach winning a Super Bowl after he came off of a 10-win first year. He is, as I've said, the equivalent of a 5-tool baseball player you have in Mike Macdonald as a head coach. And John Schneider is probably going to be a Hall of Famer at this point with getting that Super Bowl win like he did. But Mike might have that more potential, that more kind of full ability as far as legacy goes, even with what he brings. So I'll go with Mike Macdonald, man, but you didn't ask me an easy one on that one. That's Sophie's choice right there. That's not an easy pick. Mick says, Brandon, I agree. People don't like people who don't agree with everyone else on some of these prospects. McAfee hypes up Mendoza so crazy and wouldn't let him defend his take, just talked over him. I thought it was kind of a cringy session. I saw the same thing, and I had the same level of kind of cringe you did with it, Mick, where I was going, and partly, Mick, it's a little bit of PTSD. I mean, I went through this last year with like the Jalen Milroe and the Elijah Arroyo pick, where people get really mad real fast. And it's kind of like hit you shocked when you're doing this as an evaluator. And I think you even saw in that with Orlovsky. He's like, what's going on, Pat? Chill out, bro. Like, I won too many Zins today. It's just my evaluation, man. It's not that serious. That's what I try to tell last year. People would get mad about. It's like, it's just an evaluation. I hope the best for the guy. It's just what I saw from him on tape. And I think that the draft hype process is one where it becomes a machine and people just want to lean into everything that's going to be great. And I think that part of the fun for me is both identifying the good, the great, and yes, also the bad. Being able to identify where you can see there's patented issues with this player or there's drawbacks with this guy that's going to not allow him to succeed. And that while being positive is good, there is always those guys that aren't going to make it out of these drafts. There's always those guys that are going to fall short. And if you're trying to study this and understand the process, then you should be trying to take all of that in. But I do see a heavy amount of it, Mick, drift really heavily into that. Just, I'll stay in this lane of things and then I don't have to worry about like the blowback. And it's like, I get it, but I don't understand the blowback too. Cause it's like, there's plenty of misses in these drafts. There's plenty of teams that don't pick well. There's plenty of picks that you can see in the moment that are bad picks just on the surface of it. Tim says, Adam Schefter is reporting NFL is planning to train 180 college reps for the 26th season because union contracts disagree. Yeah, it's a place where NFL gets cheap in the weirdest of ways. And this is another one of them. I was trying to think about this the other day. It's like, how many ref crews do you have? Like 20 ref crews, maybe at the most. And, what are you paying them collectively a year? Like, $500,000 or something like that for each ref crew. And you start running the math and you're like, all right, so we're doing $20 million a year or something. Like what is the multi-billion dollar industry? What's the holdup here? The math doesn't math to me, Tim. So this thing should have been figured out, and but the NFL can't, and they did this before, right? So, JL says he's the best in the game. If you can get him, you get him. Our team is deep and we can give up some draft picks and be okay considering how well we draft. Yeah, I can understand the people that are pushing back and it's going to be a high cost and there'd be those people that be worried and there'd be a risk. I get that. But like you say, JL, I think that these kind of guys are really hard to find. They're really hard to be made available. I don't see the pathway for the next one coming down the line that we're going to be able to get, And so here you've got an opportunity to do so, to strike while you got an opportunity and an opportunity where you don't have to pay as high a price where you might have in another time. So it's, for me, it would be worth it. I would jump into this territory. There's always risk involved in this NFL. You could decide, well, we want to go with Derek Hall. He's the much younger player and we're going to sign him to the contract. And then he suddenly has an injury. There's always risk every which way. There's levels and degrees of risk. But there is no move that ever exists where you're going to be able to just avoid it at any turn or every turn. Dune says they're never going to catch Mike until the league makes inhibiting rule changes that forces the gap to close. No more cover two shell. You will show the coverages that you intend to run prior to the snap. I can see it, Dune. Mike is too brilliant with this stuff. Was Milroe pick a bust? I don't know if it's a bust. I think it's a pick that you took Milroe, understanding that he was going to take time to round out his game and to overcome some of the issues within his game, and that was going to probably take a couple of years, and that wasn't necessarily the worst of things because the upside and the ceiling that exists in Milroe was so possible as well within that. If you can see him realizing it, you get no guarantees on that. But it also means that you just can't wait 1 year and go, was it or not? It's one where we've got to get through the full 2 years, get into year 3, see where his development's at, and then we can make that assessment at that point. And that's all really by the plan of the pick in the moment when Seattle made it. And you can see the evidence of that in the 2-year deal that you gave to Drew Lock. Lock comes right out of contract, right about the time that you're hoping Milroe can step forward as that suitable backup, and then also have really raised the levels of his game up to clean up some of those issues that were there. At least Willis had some crazy upside. He did. It's just, it was going to take a long time to get there, and you don't really want to be taking that in the first round. Brian, was easy to deduce the McAfee is in the tank for Mendoza, and so Orlovsky has some reason to be unhappy set with McAfee. He asked for an observation, and Dan gave him one. If you don't want it. Yeah. I know. Yeah, McAfee was weirdly moody in that one. Pickett's issues were hand size and arm strength. He's still a decent backup. Yeah, backup, fine. Riddler was a 3rd round pick. Yeah, Riddler was a 3rd rounder. Has McAfee also been hyping up Rodgers every chance he gets, and he's past his prime and consistently holds his team hostage every year? What other quarterback has done that consistently? Yeah, that's the thing with McAfee, where it's like some of what you'll do is like dressed in this, some of it's dressed in that. It's not just your pure, honest opinion at times. And so it's like, dude, I don't like having to question that on my. It's part of what makes it hard for me to watch people like that at times, because it's just like, where are we operating from today? My friendships dictating what I'm saying on this? My slant on this is dictating that versus just kind of what you truly really think, Hey, Hawks, you should pick a lane, stay with it, but be open-minded. No, you're not the expert you think you are. Exactly. Agreed. You're always got to be open-minded to the fact that you don't have all the answers. You have an opinion, but that's where too, with new information, opinions should change and shift. New data always kind of moves in that direction a bit. Agreed. Big hours respect your analysis, Brandon, because you actually watch the film and you're not afraid to tell the bad with the good. It feels more genuine. I think I fall back on thinking there's the people on there that find value in that are going to like that. And that there's plenty of audience members that want to hear just the other side of it, where it's just kind of the positive. And I get that. I'm not necessarily, there's different types, different strokes for different folks, and people want to see different stuff. But I fall back in line with wanting to be, I think, more simpatico with folks like yourself that are looking for the full picture on the player. Partly because the more fuller picture gives you the more better understanding of what your team's done, both from a brilliant or stupid standpoint or a visionary standpoint. It's like they're grabbing this player who's got the skill set, let's say, to do this. And well, there's this hole in this game and they're holding this game here and there and over there. But you know what? He's going to play this position in this scheme here. So all that stuff becomes null and void. Wow, isn't that so smart that they've diminished all of his negatives and reinforced his positives by what he's going to do in this system and scheme? And that's, to me, where it gives you just that fuller, richer picture by looking at sometimes some of those negative aspects. Let's go Mariners, D-Nugget. Angry Whale Watcher, good luck. Thanks for the coverage. Thank you, Angry Whale Watcher. Appreciate you. Trinity says Rams are going to go back to sweeping the Seahawks. I can't wait. No. You're going to lose 2 of 3 again. Bare minimum. Just the way it's going to go. Jay says, remember when Mel Kiper suggested that they ban the cover 2? I know I was kind of joking about it, but it's sort of true too. It's also, they could kind of do it if it became too dominant. He says, Lamb fans still think Peter Clay Carroll's coaching. Where was he? Jeff Fisher 2.0 after 2014. Random McDaniel, thank you for the $2 donation. Anyone on the roster off limits for you in the Garrett trade? Great question, my man. Great question. Ooh. Well, we don't have the Witherspoon deal done. So first off, Witherspoon's a no. I'm not looking at moving Leonard Williams even at this point. That doesn't make any sense. Byron Murphy would be a no. I'm not moving. Obviously, I can't. Any of the new contracts you've given out to any new players, Randall, would be having them off the board. JSN's a no, obviously. Darnold's a no. I don't really want to include Gray Zabel on this. I don't think that makes any sense at this point to throw him into it as a part of the process. But DeMarcus Lawrence, you're not going to do, on that. But pretty much Julian Love would probably be a guy I'd want to keep here. I don't think he'd have the value to Cleveland. I don't think they'd be wanting to add Love in there. But that'd be about it. I mean, just about anything else, It's kind of like you gotta be realistic. Like they're not gonna want Cup. I think I'd have a hard time moving Barner as well in this situation, but I don't know if I'd say that's a no-go, like that's off limits if it's going to especially lower down the draft capital, but I don't think they'd be really looking for that anyway. That's where we come down. Like there's guys they're not really going to be looking at. Like they just drafted that kid last year who's played really well for them that I liked in the draft last year, Randall. So like they're kind of fine. They're a tight end for that. They wouldn't be looking at that position. But you could see them like Derek Hall, Tyrese Knight, Torrey Horton, Elijah Arroyo. Some of these kind of guys I think would be kind of in play. Trinity says, got to say what I believe, no Kenneth and no Tariq while we got McDuffie and Watson. Yeah, I would offer Trinity just, if you can, go back at the start of the episode. I spend if you have time, obviously you don't have time, it's all good. But I go into a pretty good dissertation there for about an hour on to, addressing a little bit of what you're talking about at play. I think there's a bit of a simplified application here at times by fans where they sort of look at everything on a base raw, this player for that player. And it sort of overlooks kind of what it is that made a team great. And if I have to kind of, distill something that I think is a takeaway as far as a Hawk fan when looking at, not just what I see from teams nationally, but also from what I see from teams a little bit in the locally or the NFC West and their outlook of Seattle and how they talk about Seattle, is that I don't think the teams really still understand yet why we were great last year. I think the teams, Trinity, tend to think that it was somehow a certain select great collection of players alone that sort of made this happen. And you do need a collection of great players to be great and to win championships. But there's a lot of other stuff that goes into this, and that those things remain, and that those are items that separate us from other teams and organizations. And they're not going away anytime soon. So it's like when you talk about Tariq Woolen, it's just like you're going, okay, you guys lost your fourth cornerback. Okay. You guys lost a starting running back. If we just talk about that in a vacuum, Trinity, of like absent talking about these exact teams of parameters, I just say that in general terms, and it's not with us having the rivalry between the Rams and us and you and all that, right? But I just speak about this in just general terms of the NFL. This one team here that won the Super Bowl, they lost their starting running back and they lost their fourth cornerback. So now, and everything else pretty much returns across the board just about, or at the very least is going to be as equally good as it was last year. Third youngest roster in the NFL. Another part that I see Ram and 49er fans not seeming to want to do this math on. So let's when the third youngest roster in the NFL wins the Super Bowl and then they return almost all of that team in full back the next year, the way that progression works And I know this can be a little bit hard because in Niners, you got the team at the end of its window. So it's like year by year, it seems like it's getting closer and it's more working in the opposite direction. Rams are 1 year away from Stafford's retirement, having to kind of turn this over. So again, it's kind of working in that direction. We're not in that place. The window's just gotten open. And what that means with that is that there's going to be more progression now from the third youngest roster in the NFL last year that's returning almost the entire roster back now this next year. That roster is going to have natural improvement. And this is the part that I don't get, Trinity, that some Ram fans don't want to understand with, like, you had your first year with Sam Darnold here with these wide receivers. First year. All that success. First year. You don't think there's going to be a better improvement in year 2 of him working with those guys? The offseason I saw a video yesterday of him working with these guys, throwing with the wide receivers in this offseason. That those extra reps, those extra practice reps, those extra OTAs, the extra training camp, that won't be an even more improved offense because of it. That the fact that you're returning 5 offensive line starters for the continuity's sake for the first time in 25, 30 years here is not going to bring better, more improvement, especially as it's under now year 2 of an outside zone system being implemented. Year two of an implementation of a system tends to see improvements from those offenses. There's going to be natural improvement here that has nothing to do relationally wise with a player here or a player there being lost. And I will say as well, we're not done. We're still sitting on all this cap space. The roster is not, the die is not cast. We haven't finished up and we're like, that's all we got. There will be more beyond this. Chad, thank you for another $5 donation, Chad. Appreciate all your support. Thanks for the insight on the previous question. Okay, my follow-up now is, what are Mike Macdonald's faults so far? Your best opinion, please. Oof. Well, I think that when you have a guy that's got right now what is the highest winning percentage for a coach in NFL history through his first 2 years, faults are kind of hard to come by, and it's hard to identify, I would say, Chad. Not because they don't exist, but because it has been such a small amount of time where it's nothing but really great results. So, he comes back and gets you 10 wins inheriting the roster that was built for Coach Carroll's defense, which is diametrically a completely 180-degree different defense than the one he basically runs. And yet found more success with it as the year went along, especially as you could get more of the roster built towards that defense. So this, I'm going to give you answers, but I'm just saying I wanted to preface that with a little bit of like, it is kind of tough on this one because there is so much uniformly good, uniformly smart, and not as like something inherently that's problematic within what he's doing. The one thing I would go to that jumped up a little bit this year in the Tampa Bay Buccaneer game was that there are times where he drifted a little bit too hard on leaning on the front four and not doing enough stuff on the back end coverage wise, not bringing enough what I call flavor and flourish out with his defense, not running enough with the stack boxes and simulated pressures, sometimes getting a little bit more leaning into like trusting that front four to just do it on its own and getting a little bit too predictive for the offenses to the other side. Kind of first world problems. Like the front four has been so dominant. I don't feel like I have to blitz because I like the dominance of my front four, but it is still something that bit you on the butt in that Buccaneer game where you could have, and Mike mentioned this after the game where he said, there was more stuff I could have done to help this team out. I could have done better with the play calling. And I agree with him. I don't think it's something that shows up week in and week out, but I think that there are weeks at times where, you just don't go quite as hard, as intricate with the game plan as he possibly could. But it's a very small criticism at that. I think that he has been able to manage the line so far of being very active on the offensive side of the ball, Chad, and that he has had that not work against him. But of course, we do know that can be a slippery slope for defensive-minded NFL coaches to start putting their fingers in that pie. So that's not necessarily a negative as it stands right now, but it's something to monitor and track as it's something that could come up down the road as being something that's like, just stick to the defense, Mike. Stop trying to, tell the offense what to do a little bit on their approach to it. Kubiak talked about having to give up reports after every game about why he did his approach every Sunday. And I'm not against this stuff, but there is times where that way of going about it can be a bit problematic for offensive coaches and them feeling a little bit like they're being handcuffed in their ability to really run their offensive game plan. Aside from that, I can't think of a lot of other stuff there, Chad. And I got a sure stretch here just as it is a little bit to kind of get where I'm at with this. That'd be about all I got. Thank you for the donation, though. Randall, thank you for the $2 donation. Better prospect coming out to you, Milroe or Malik Willis? Well, both of them would have been, I believe on both of those guys, I had third round grades on both of them, Randall. So there's that out the jump where I had them both similarly like rated. I would probably go for Milroe because what you're dealing with is two guys that are both going to be projects. So I'm selecting both of these two players knowing that the returns are not going to be instantaneous and not even likely to be within the first 2 years. So if it's a matter of it's going to be a waiting game for either two guy, what is the guy that's got more of the upside? To me, Milroe's got the stronger arm and he's got more of the explosive mobility. I think Malik's probably a little bit more of the lateral mover and probably a little bit more laterally athletic. But I think Milroe is more of he's got a gear to him that Malik just doesn't have. And he's a little bit more, I think, even solidler, a little bigger, a little more solidly built. I think there's a little more upside to Milroe's game than Malik. I think Malik can be a solid starter in this league. Milroe's got star potential if he can round out his game in all the right ways. So I go that direction. But again, both third round picks, both projects, both 2-year projects as you're drafting them. I believe in Malik. I was on record as saying this guy's going to take a couple years to figure out what he is, what he can do. It's coming from Liberty and his game is rough as hell. Footwork, rough as hell. Accuracy needed to get refined. Milroe, similar. Feed me. Thank you for the $2 donation. Feed me. Any chance I have reached OG status yet, Brando? Oh, 100%. 100% feed me. You're in the OG annuals of Hawks Nest history, brother. We got to get an all-time OG wall. We do. I got to put that together. That'd be a good banner wall for me, actually, to have up all my OG names of the folks on the channel here up on the banner for the channel. That'd be kind of cool. But you bet you have. Thank you for the dono, man. Of course, you freaking OG. 100%. Trinity says, enjoy the Lombardi. It'll be a long time for another one. I mean, we got one 10 years ago, and then we got another one now. I mean, we've been to 4 Super Bowls in 20 years. It doesn't feel like we got to wait a long time. Cam says, Milroe looked awful year one. I think it'll be more of the same. Oh, well. Yeah, I mean, the evaluation is still my true evaluation, is that though I had a third round grade on him, though I had a lot of upside that I saw in him, I wasn't confident he was going to reach it. And it's the same reason I wasn't confident Malik was going to reach it, but Malik has proven me a little bit wrong on that. And that's just because when there's this much work you have to undertake and it's going to take this long to get it done, we don't have a lot of track record of quarterbacks getting that figured out. It's kind of becoming more of a now, modernized thing, Cam, where there's more quarterbacks that are starting to see some examples of this. But the baseline of NFL history is not great when it comes to guys that he comes out, he's got talent, but there's all of these holes in his game that you got to plug up before you can hope to put him out on the football field. Next year, Rams Eagles for the Super Bowl. Eamon Warrior's definitely a no. They don't even think of asking for Eamon Warrior. Step back says, do we know what type of corner Mike Macdonald likes or would go after since letting Reek go? I think that I'm guessing on some of it with Mike. You know, when he got to Baltimore, he kind of inherited the corners that he was going to have in Baltimore. And when he's come here, he's kind of inherited some of the corners here. Obviously, Imanwari is your Kyle Hamilton. He's a little bit different than just a pure corner, even though he's slot corner by and large. But I think to your point, your question, step back, is about the outside corners and the type you might be looking for. Is you want the 6'1", physical guy that can press. Is he looking for more of an off coverage, 5'11", 190-pound, super twitchy, jump on top of route, ball skill guy? I don't know. Step back. That'd be my answer to you on that. He's shown a willingness to play corners out there that aren't necessarily super amazing tacklers. I think that first and foremost, he wants a guy that can play press and can play off coverage, can play press man, can play off coverage zone. And that I think he starts with his outside cornerbacks wanting that. And then he kind of goes from there a little bit. I think he showed at times a willingness, for instance, when, Willem was great with press for the most part and really good running trail coverage off of that. So he'd run a lot of press to one side with him. And then you get like a Job or Witherspoon with off coverage to the other side. Or vice versa. Job was out there, off coverage Job, and Witherspoon up in press. So we don't have a lot on that, just because they haven't taken a lot of corners in any of the stops that he's been at here in the NFL so far, really. So hard to say on that. I think we'll probably learn from this draft a little bit more concretely. And we haven't gone after any corners on the outside either on this step back, right? Like you haven't really gone after anybody outside last offseason, and you haven't this offseason either, re-signing Job. So kind of hard to know for sure on that. It's a bit of a guess. Johnny says, remember when the Ram fans and players crashed out last year and questioned everything? I remember. Kubiak is our biggest loss. It's not even close. True. Baba Yaga. Hey, Brandon, during the Legion of Boom era, who is a player that we let walk in free agency that you wish we would have kept? I personally would have loved to see Brandon Browner stay. Keeping Brandon Browner would have been nice. I'd be probably hard pressed to find another one that, stands out beyond that. If I may, I think that if you went back in retrospect, I think that the key move that I would have made Bobby Yaga is that you don't make the trade for Percy. You re-sign Golden Tate, and now you have this first round pick, and you're signing Golden Tate for less of what you paid Percy Harvin, and now you're better able to maximize out the roster from that. That would probably be the move that I wish I could it's not exactly what you asked on that on the front end, but I'm going to have to kind of creatively go to a place like that in part because there's really not a guy that you lost that you felt horrible about. I mean, Russell Okung left and technically got a little bit more of his career able to get going after he left, but his body was breaking down. Maybe a James Carpenter, but he was kind of a just, average, just solidly average kind of left guard. You didn't break your heart that he left. So it'd be tough for me on that one. There wasn't a lot of guys I was kicking through. Brandon Browner's as good as anyone on that one. But I'd probably go to the Golden Tate Percy Harvin trade-off you could have had on that as an alternative. Cam says, bro won't even address the biggest problem. Has he said anything about the Kubiak? Well, I think that the Kubiak loss is going to hurt here, Cam, but let's remember that this is not your typical offensive coordinator loss. You lose an offensive coordinator and he's going to take his staff with him and go be a head coach. He took 2 guys or something like that with him. You were able to retain a big part of the staff here with this. And it's not like you're now flipping out one offense for a whole nother new offense. You're operating off of the Kyle Shanahan outside zone offense, and now you're going to the outside Kyle Shanahan outside zone offense. So Kubiak did tremendous work, and it will be remaining to be seen whether or not the new OC is going to be able to, replicate some of what he did. But I think that there's a lot in place here for this new offensive coordinator to have success, the likes of which I think very few offensive coordinators have ever been able to walk into. He's getting all of his starters across the board with the exception of a starting running back. He's 4 deep at tight end. He's got a fullback. He's got depth on his offensive line on top of all 5 starters returning. His whole receiving core is back. He gets Sam Darnold and all those second-year returns that are going to be in place regardless of what he brings as a play caller. This is also a team that's, heavily on board with running the ball and being kind of like they were last year at times, pretty like we're not trying to be hyper explosive and score a million points. We just want to move consistent drives, run the ball, grind on the clock, control the line of scrimmage. Becomes less about having, to me, the definable genius as an OC and more about the philosophy and approach itself at that point. So I'm not trying to undersell the Kubiak impact here, but I just don't think that the new guy coming in is walking in with an empty cupboard, number one. Number two, there's a lot of coaching continuity that exists here that doesn't tend to exist when you're turning these things out. And I think the team's got a lot of talent offensively that to believe that they're just going to take this big, huge step back just simply because Kubiak left for a guy that's only was here for 1 year is a little bit of a leap for me. I'm willing to own into the fact that there's some pain to be had there with it, but I just don't know that it's a guarantee that you take that step backwards, especially for the other things that are going to be certain returns, like the quarterback having year 2 in the same system with the same personnel around him and what that brings with it. And that you got the continuity of the offensive line and what that brings with it. I think people kind of flippantly throw these things away to the side, not understanding how many teams in this NFL, Cam, are going to bring 5 starters back on their offensive line the very next year. How many of them? Or how many of them are 1, 2, 3 of the Cleveland Browns got to, all 5 pieces have got to be, removed out, turned out for a new? Kirk, we don't know how the new offensive play caller will affect the offense, regardless of how many players we brought back. Yeah, I think that there's a truth to this. There's also the truth to it, though, that it doesn't instantaneously means that this is failure, which is a little bit of what this gets talked about as well. It's an unknown. I have a hard time seeing the failure front here. The Grubb failure occurred because of the fact that you were trying out this offense for this hire at this time. You didn't have any kind of thing established in place. Macdonald's first year, he's trying to get his defense on board. Late hire for him, not many options out there to pick through. Everything's still being kind of figured out. This is a little bit of a different hire to me. And that it's a little bit of the less of the risk there. You may not be getting the upside with this hire that you might have had with a Kubiak, but I think there's some floor here to this one as well, especially considering, again, the same coaches that are staying in. You got the offensive line coaches remaining. All right. How many different guys are staying in-house here that can keep that continuity in place, which is a big part of then hoping that you can still find some of the similar success. He's scared about Kubiak when he addressed it. I addressed it. I talked to my whole chat, Cam. So I'm a little slower. I'm a little bit behind my chat sometimes with folks that like me to be a little quicker, but I'm just trying to respond to as many people as I possibly can. I'll answer any question you got, bro. I don't, again, as we talk about this, I don't know of a team that you go, that team's going to be a shell of itself because they lost an offensive coordinator. That offense that's returning all of their starters back on that side of the ball is not going to be anything close to what they were the prior year because of the fact that offensive coordinator. I think that overstates a little bit of Kubiak's effect here and minimizes a little bit of the talent level that drove some of the success last year, offensively speaking. So I think that's where we'd have a bit of a difference of opinion of this, of that, you got to overcome losing an offensive coordinator. But if I am losing an offensive coordinator while retaining most of my offensive staff, is that as bad a loss? If I lose an offensive coordinator while being able to return all of my offensive starters plus depth for an offense that just set the point scoring record for a team in the history of this organization, yeah, I think you can. And I think that those are 2 real valid parts that can counter that a bit. Doesn't mean that Fleury's just going to be riding on high when he walks into there, but he's going to be given an elite defense and he's going to be given a great special teams unit. And guess what? That was a big driving force that helped the offense find success last year. So the whole point of this show with the Cam, which is just that the building of this team is not about an individual player or an individual coach. It is the process. It's a process that I spent 2 hours at the top of the show individually breaking down to a pretty minute level, to try to, in part, to kind of upend some of this concept that exists out there of you lose this player and then you don't sign a player to replace that player. So now you're definitely going to be lesser because of it. That there's more that goes kind of into this stuff than just simply that. But yeah, if we talked about Cam, I'm losing half my offense to free agency because of the Super Bowl tax. If we're talking about Cam, I got an offensive coordinator that's leaving and he's taking all of that staff with him. And now I've got to not only replace my OC, but replace a new staff, but put in a new offensive system. I'd be right there with you on your argument. But that's not the way that this is playing out as far as what you're flipping out from the other. There's continuity that's still going to exist between these two changes. And it's a part that you got to take into account, I think, a little bit. Nia says the 2025 Seahawks were combined 9 points away from a perfect season. Also, one of the top 5 teams in all-time terms in DVOA. This past Seahawks team was special, even more so than 2013. Very true. Again, as the 3rd youngest roster in the NFL, all those facts that Nia just posted up there are 100% true, and that's with the 3rd youngest roster in the entire National Football League. I say that one more time for it, too. The 2025 DVOA, which is supposed to measure how purely great your team is with all the parameters brought in, all the statistics compiled and put together, was better than the 2013 team. And as he said, 9 points away from a perfect season. Megan, you're definitely an OG. Come on now. You know that. Stitch says, I need the season to start now. Amen, Stitch. Let's go. Let's go. Grandizer, how you doing, bro? Catalyst, I love Kubiak. I think he's impossible to replace, but I like bringing in Fleury to increase the tight end potential. Amen. I don't think you know what you got in Fleury, and he might be a bit of a step back. It's like a big formula, you know. Does the natural improvement of the offense first a little bit of a step back on the play calling, first maybe even the defense being better, special teams still being elite? What does that bear out as far as the math goes? We'll see this year. Jay says, I think Mike likes corners that don't single-handedly almost screw our Super Bowl run. I think so. Vin says, Gabe Yakis will be the Seahawks' first pick. Vin's calling his shot. I'll remember Vin. Yeah, I read Brian Chris Clemens hurt, but you kind of had the ways to sort of fill in their losses. So they stung, but some of these were understandable losses for the cost that they were going to get on the open market. Yakis is fun, Vin. Certainly he's got the size dimensions to be the power edge that they're looking for. Yeah, Max Unger getting traded away hurt too. That would have been one of my one on the list as well there, Cope. Random McDaniel, thank you for the $2 donation. Says Mac recently did an interview on the John Gordon podcast. I will go check it out. Always like hearing Mike talk. So thank you for the letting know. John Gruden, I think you meant, or John Gordon. I'll look them up both. Like the new name, Brennan. Feed me OG Hawks Nest member. Yes, that's very good. Creative. Oh, Lordy. Vince says, I think Fleury will be a step forward. He said himself, Kubiak's using older version of the 49ers style plays. Ooh, I like it. Vin coming in with some great bold takes. Let's go, Vin. I think there's potential both ways. You know, I think we don't know. I think that there's still going to be a floor of consistency in the performance of this offense because of the continuity factor and the level of talent you have on offense and the way this team is built. But I will admit that's a part that we're going to have to, see play out to know how it'll look for sure. Catalyst is one thing I adored about Kubiak is his shift towards play action, bombing downfield and getting Darnold them easy throws. He did have a nice balance between having that offense that would work its way up the field to knowing when he could take his shots when the defense started to kind of draw some of the defense just a little bit too much around the line of scrimmage. Great with that balance he was. Impressive. Kirk says the change in play caller could go either way. It could be a big drop off and it could be an improvement. We won't know until the season is in full swing. As much as I like Kubiak, he had his flaws. He did. He wasn't perfect with it. Had some times where he could drive us a little bit crazy with some of the just getting weird with it all of a sudden, getting a little counterintuitive all of a sudden, Kirk. But I think these are fair points. We won't really know until we know on what kind of coordinator he is. That is for sure. All right, we'll priority start to put a bit of a wrap up on this here. We got a good almost 4 hours in the books on this. So if you guys can for me, hit that like button. Would really appreciate it. If you can, get subbed up as well. It's free. Doesn't cost you anything. We're on the road to 30,000 subscribers here this off season. I put the note out earlier, just another note into you guys. I'm looking for a video editor here for the channel. We want to get the Clips channel up and rolling and going hot this year. So I'm going to be looking to get a Clips guy going. It's going to be a little bit of, partially like to do this is sort of getting somebody that can work as a video editor / kind of work with them on getting things going themselves as maybe a content creator as well in the future on this stuff. But anyway, reach out to me. heyhawksnest@gmail.com if you're potentially interested in this opportunity. I would really like to get somebody on board. I really like you guys watching today as well. Thank you guys for tuning on in with me here today with a great discussion. Really appreciate it. If you got any last questions here, just be Brandon Hawksnest. Let me know. Cope says, Brando, if both Jadarian Price and one of your favorite corners is available at pick 32, which one would you take? So I am, and thank you, Randall, thank you, Randall, for sending that text, for the note on Gordon there. Cope, I've got a lot of work still left to do in Jadarian Price, and it's not because I haven't looked at Jadarian Price. I've looked at a lot at Jadarian Price. It's just that I can't quite get as sold on him as others are. And I will fully admit, I always say this every year, there's usually like 3-4 prospects that are like guys that the fan base or nationally are getting a lot of acclaim and a lot of love. And for some reason or another, I'm having a blind spot in my evaluation process. And that I'm just not quite, I'm trying to get it synced up to where people are at on a given player, and I can't quite get there. It's not always because like I'm just so smart and brilliant in my film study that I'm seeing something that 98% of the population isn't seeing. Sometimes I'm just missing it. What I have leaned back on with this though, Cope, is to say then my guts kind of guided me right in the past when I have these kind of players that there's some that'll miss on, like I said, 3 to 4 where I might just be proven wrong. And I just could not see that one clearly. But more often than not, it does tend to be that with those guys that I'm a little bit lighter on than others are really starting to hype up, I had them in the right place. And for me, I do have a 3rd round grade on Jadarian Price. It's a high 3rd round grade. If you're taking him at the end of the 2nd round, it's probably in about the right place for where Seattle's picking. But to take him at 32 for me, the value is not right versus being able to go get a legitimate high 2nd round graded corner at that very same spot. So that would feel like a pick to me of need at that point, Cope, which as we got back to the start of the show, one of the big things that I've railed against, one of the things that I think John has adjusted in this process is no longer picking for need anymore. So I would go cornerback, and I would have a collection of guys I would take ahead of Jadarian Price. Part of this might be my own failing, though, and just not quite getting it. I just keep coming back to he's 200 pounds. He has a running style that would seem to need to be a guy up more around 215 to 220. And he's not a fast enough, quick enough guy to operate at that kind of sub 200 pound range of things. It's kind of a brass tacks on it. That's the part I'm fundamentally struggling with as I turn the tape over with Price. That's the part that to me just isn't quite finding its sync. So I like Price. He's one of my highest rated backs in this draft, but that's my struggle there. That's my great draft struggle. Power Ranger, happy Palm Sunday. Megan, Hawks Nest, John Schneider over Mike Macdonald for me. Need the picks before the team builds, and I am a JSN fangirl. Nothing wrong with that, Megan. Nothing wrong with that. I'm on the fence with a little bit. I kind of went to that leadership angle, but you could talk me into JS on this one. I don't have a super strong, they both done phenomenal work. You know, whenever you're trying to pull apart two guys that have both done phenomenal work, it's like picking between two Hall of Famers. Like, you know, they're both great at what they do. Good point. Yeah, it's where I hope to not, I think I come off sometimes when I don't mean to with this stuff or the draft stuff as know-it-all, and I'm quite opposite not. I'm trying to get better at this every year, and it's always trying to be a learning process for me that hopefully I get better every year because I can hopefully look to where I'm missing on stuff and to better wrap myself up to stuff. And I look for historical recent markers as try to learn lessons that I might have gotten wrong. So it's never about like, I've got the end all be all with it. I certainly can admit that there's going to be maybe just those guys in retrospect where I just look back at it and I shrug and I go, yeah, I should have seen it. And it just didn't quite pop up in the way that it should have with me when I looked at the tape. And this is why I do want to go back and look at Jadarian, because if so many are being so collective in their universal praise and saying where he should go and that this is in play at 32 and Seattle's meeting with their coach at Jadarian's pro day, well, maybe I'm missing something, you know, which is very feasible. So I just have to go back and look at it in that way. But those are the two things I struggle with him on it. You know, what are you? Are you a power back or are you a big play back? And if you're a big play back, if you're the explosive guy, I'd kind of like to get more of a feeling of you being in the low 1.5s on your 10-yard split, for instance. I'd like to kind of feel more of the burst from you. And there's just some times on him tape where I feel like there is the latency there with that 1.61 10-yard split he's carrying and the kind of the average-ish 40-yard dash. And you kind of go, it's first round. Again, we come back to a good player, but we go, the bottom line is we're going first round guy, or at the first pick in the second round. We're talking about a guy at this point that is going to be taken higher than Zach Charbonnet, is taken higher than Kenneth Walker. If I had to pick between those three guys, which am I taking? It ain't Jadarian Price. I'll tell you that. These are the things I struggle with on that one at 32, man. He's a good player, though. Kobe says maybe Hawks get a speeder running back in the mid rounds after going BPA between corner and edge. For that, that's where I'd like to go more with it, Cope. You know, maybe you move back off the first round pick to like 15. You get the extra fourth round pick back. You're picking 15 in the second. You go with one of those corners that'll still be available at that point. Come back around to running back a little bit later on. This system is one that is not always relying on you taking a high-end running back, you know, to make it work. And you can make it work as long as you find the size, speed, explosive model prototype that you're looking for in the system. I've called it the Terrell Davis kind of archetype-ish of running back you'd like to find. You know, lock into more of those guys, and they can have some restrictions and limitations to the game as long as they've got the pluses in the right columns that fit to the system. And that's more of where I'd like to lean in as well, Cope, especially when it comes to kind of maximizing the positional valuation of running backs and where you should put that. Catalyst is going to finish us off with a nice $10 donation and a big shout out to all of you guys. Thank you for all of your tremendous as ever, unbelievable, unfailing, and very, very generous support, which has just been phenomenal again this stream. I really appreciate y'all for that. Catalyst, thank you for that. Tenor says, Brandon, thanks for all the great work you do for us. Question, would you want Seattle to trade out of the first to get another pick or stay put to get the fifth-year option on a player they might like? It's very hard to answer this as a one-size-fits-all because of the fact that it's hard for me to answer this because I have to see kind of the exact player we're talking about. You know, like a Denzel Boston lands in that spot at 32. That's a guy that I have a first-round grade on, and that could make sense for you sitting there at 32 to go take that guy, you know? And that's if a guy like, Jermod McCoy, maybe the most talented cornerback in this draft. If he falls to you at 32 and you know he's coming off that ACL and might need an extra year to get really fully back to 100% of what he can be, as maybe the most talented cornerback in this class. Well, that's a player that maybe Catalyst I sit there and I just stay and pick on. So the key on this would be, if I've got a first round graded player, understanding that there's currently right now, I'll give you the number. Currently right now, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. I've got 16 first round graded players. So if any of those 16 first round graded players were to happen to drift down to you at 32, I think that you've got to look at picking there. Now, if there is a team that's willing to come up at, like, let's say they're 12th in the second round and they want to come up to the top of the back of the first round to get that 5th year option, and they'll give you a 3rd round pick back to make that move. Well, Catalyst, I'm going to go ahead and make that move. I think unless it's really one of those first round graded players that I'm really like kind of over the move on, like the value is just too good. So my tendency would be to go back a little bit on this one. My tendency would be not to trade out of the first, but to move back into kind of mid-second round and pick up one of either be a late 3rd round pick or a high 4th round pick, kind of move back in that area of things. That would be where I'd like to kind of lean if we can. Get one of those extra kind of picks in that place. But if there is that guy that happens to drift, I'm kind of splitting the difference on this one, Catalyst, to a degree. So it does just kind of come down to that specificity of which is the guy that's landing there. You're talking about Monroe Freeling. Well, he's a first round grade guy, but you're not really looking at him. So that's probably not going to be a guy there. So it really is kind of player by player dependent on this one a little bit. I don't think the 5th year option would be pressing me as much outside of a guy like a Jermod McCoy, for instance, with the injury thing. I think it'd be just more of, is this guy like just a tremendous difference making to potential fit we can't get later on in the draft versus trading back to pick up that extra pick. And I would happen to think it's probably the latter rather than the former, but man, it's a good question, Catalyst. It's a good question. I'd have to go like player by player on this one a little bit and going, well, is it this guy? Is it kind of that guy there that's in this spot? But in general terms, moving back is probably the way. Because there's probably a player some team's going to love there at 32 who wants that 5th year option, who gives you the goods to move up into that spot and then get you that extra pick in the draft, especially to get another day 2 pick, which would be unbelievable. Yeah, it really just depends, man. It's a great question. It really is. There's not a great answer to it, quite honestly, because it is kind of like, well, what's the offer exactly? Where are you falling back to? Who are the players that are then available to you when you pull back to 12? And part of it is how Catalyst, this draft is so wild and how it could run in the first round and the wild variance of different players that could go in the first round because there are so few first rounders, which will cause some teams to pick for need, which will cause some players to rise up who shouldn't rise up on boards. It's going to be basically pure and utter chaos. Coke and Brandon, any chance we get a live stream of this upcoming Yankees versus Mariners series this week with you and Jake together, of course? I can try. I don't know if Jake does live play-by-play. He's more of a wrap-up guy on the baseball front, but I'll try to see what I can put together for you. I've been, I want to do some Mariner broadcasts this summer, and I think that'd be a lot of fun. So I'll try to see what I can put together for you on that, man. I've been kind of doing some offline stuff, just trying to work on some things in the background of the channel, just some kind of outlier stuff with this a bit, but we'll get back in on the stream schedule here and get this going. Try to see if I can get that. That's a great suggestion. Hit that like button, please, as my brother says. Appreciate you for that, Rob. Please do hit that like button on your way out the door today, folks. Really, really, really appreciate it. Catalyst, I was the 150th like. Proud to be a 4-year supporter. Well, thank you for that, Catalyst. The support that I get on this channel is absolutely unbelievable. And I love your guys' where your mindset is. You guys always get me thinking like you did with your question there. Always keep me on my toes, always got me thinking deep on this stuff. And I just love that about you guys because that's what I'm here for. That's what I love about doing this channel is that we just get to get into the depths of this stuff and really untangle it and really try to understand it a little bit better. And I think we always come out of these streams every time a little bit collectively, a little bit more intelligent and understanding what's going on. And I just love that about it. We got a busy schedule coming up this week for you guys. B&B show is going to be looking at the edge group in this draft on Thursday. We've also got the Seahawks Syndicate this Thursday as well coming back at you with some open discussion. We got the NFC West Roundtable here on Tuesday. We'll keep that cooking up, and I'll see if we can maybe get a little bit of Mariner action for you on here into the next weekend here as we got the Yankees coming up on the horizon as go Mariners indeed. Appreciate you guys watching today. Thank you for the great discussion. Thank you for all the fine support on your guys' part. Back shortly. Everyone's telling you that they're nipping at your heels. Everyone's telling you nationally that they've overtaken your team. Tell them to shut the hell up. Tell them they don't know what they're talking about. Ask them what they saw was the record prediction last year. You hear that bold pundit out there telling you the Hawks are now in third place? Go back and do a search on his videos back last year. See where he's predicting where your Seattle Seahawks team was going to be at. Probably around the same area, huh? They ain't learned their lessons. They still aren't figuring it out. They aren't actually reverse engineering the Seattle Seahawks. Instead, they're talking themselves into, if we just flop this player out for that player and this player out for that player, they don't understand the process. They're simply looking at the results. But it's the process by which the Seattle Seahawks have ran that have made them the Super Bowl winner with the third youngest roster in the NFL and the bright future that you got to wear sunglasses you can't even look at straight on. That's what's brought them to where they're at. At the start of the show, we unpacked it all. We went stem to stern, front office to coaching, interconnected, and how it is all put together as a detail-driven plan that all connects. They're not unrelated parts, but the parts all connect together. You create the Power Rangers super soldier, basically. That's what Seattle's doing. But instead, you see these teams, it's player flop in, player flop out. It's not about the process for a lot of these teams. And that's part of the reason that the Seattle Seahawks team is going to remain a separating team in the sport, that's going to remain a lead team in the sport for the foreseeable future. My name is Brandon Kane. It's the Hawks Nest. Please hit that like button. Please sub on up. But beyond all else, I shouldn't have to let you know. I shouldn't have to remind you, but I'm going to do so anyway. Don't you dare forget. Don't you let them tell you they're nipping at your heels. Don't you let them dippity in your ear, them trolls trying to talk themselves up to being as great as we are. Not as good as we are, as great as we are. Don't let them talk it. Don't let them moan it. Don't let them gas you up. It's all a lot of empty talk from those that are not sitting in first place, from those that aren't the champs, from those that aren't wearing the crown. And though the crown may wear heavy, we wear the crown nonetheless. So don't you forget. Don't you dare forget. Go Hawks, baby.